When Claire Dawson threw herself into a burning building to save a screaming child, she had no idea the little boy trapped in those flames was worth $3 billion, or that his father would turn her world upside down, searching every corner of Chicago to find the homeless woman who'd disappeared into the smoke. This is a story about one desperate moment that changed 3 lives forever, about the kind of courage that can't be bought, and the second chances we never see coming. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The February wind off Lake Michigan cut through clothes like broken glass. Clare Dawson had learned that the hard way over the past 8 months, curled up in doorways and beneath overpasses, wearing every piece of clothing she owned in layers that never quite kept the cold out. Tonight she'd found a spot outside an abandoned warehouse on the south side, tucked between a dumpster and a loading dock that blocked some of the wind. Not comfortable. Nothing was comfortable anymore, but survivable. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around her shins, trying to conserve heat. Her breath came out in clouds. Her fingers had gone numb an hour ago, even stuffed into the pockets of the torn winter coat someone had left at a shelter. She'd grabbed it on her way out before the shelter filled up for the night. These days you had to get there by 4 in the afternoon if you wanted a bed. Claire had been across town looking for day work, standing in a line of 40 people hoping for one construction cleanup job that paid cash. She hadn't gotten it. The streets around her were mostly empty. A few cars passed, headlights sweeping across cracked pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Claire had stopped flinching at sirens months ago. They were just part of the city's soundtrack now, like the rattle of the L train or the endless honking of impatient drivers. She thought about Jessica sometimes, her former best friend. They taught at the same elementary school in Naperville, shared an apartment, split groceries, stayed up late grading papers and complaining about parents who thought their little darlings could do no wrong. That felt like a different lifetime. Like it had happened to someone else. Maybe it had. The person Claire used to be, the one who wore clean clothes and paid rent on time and knew what day of the week it was. That person was gone. Dead, maybe. Or just lost somewhere in the mess of the past 2 years. It started with the headaches. Terrible, blinding things that made her vision swim and her stomach turn. She'd ignored them for months, swallowing ibuprofen and telling herself she was just stressed. Teaching 27 third graders would stress anyone out. But when she finally went to the doctor, they'd found the tumor. Benign, thank God, but sitting right against her optic nerve. The surgery was necessary. The surgery was also $23,000 after insurance. She'd paid it. Maxed out 2 credit cards and took out a personal loan at an interest rate that should have been illegal. What choice did she have? The headaches were getting worse. The doctor said if they didn't operate, she could lose her vision. The surgery worked. They removed the tumor, she recovered, went back to work. But the bills kept coming. Hospital fees she didn't understand, charges for things she couldn't remember agreeing to, balance statements that made her hands shake. She paid what she could, but it wasn't enough. The credit card companies started calling, then the collection agencies. Then her mom died. Heart attack, sudden and vicious, at 61 years old. Claire flew back to Ohio for the funeral, missed a week of work. When she returned, there was a letter in her mailbox explaining that the school district was making budget cuts. Her position had been eliminated. They were very sorry. She tried to fight it, called the union rep, filed grievances, sent letters to the school board. But they'd done everything by the book, technically speaking. Last hired, first fired. Nothing personal, just business. Jessica had been sympathetic at first. Let Claire stay an extra month without paying rent while she looked for work. But jobs weren't easy to find, not with the economy barely recovering and 100 applicants for every teaching position. Claire had expanded her search. Retail, food service, anything with a paycheck. But most places wanted references, work history, a permanent address. Things that were getting harder to provide. After 2 months, Jessica asked her to leave. Not meanly, just firmly. She had her own bills to pay, and her boyfriend was moving in, and it wasn't fair to expect her to carry both of them. Claire understood. She really did. But understanding didn't give her anywhere to go. She tried staying with a cousin in Gary for a while, sleeping on his couch and chipping in where she could. But his girlfriend hadn't liked having a freeloader around, and the arguments got loud enough that Claire left before she got him kicked out too. After that came a series of cheap weekly motels, the kind that rented to people who couldn't pass credit checks. She'd burned through what little savings she had left, sold everything worth selling, her laptop, her jewelry, her grandmother's china set. When the money ran out completely, the streets were all that remained. People didn't understand how fast it could happen, how quickly a regular life could fall apart. One bad break, one unexpected bill, one missed paycheck, and suddenly you were 2 steps away from sleeping in your car. Another step and you didn't have a car anymore. Claire had been homeless for 8 months now. She knew which shelters served dinner on which nights, which soup kitchens opened earliest, which businesses would let you use their bathroom if you bought a cup of coffee. She knew how to keep her head down, how to avoid eye contact with the cops, how to spot the kind of men who looked at homeless women like prey. She knew things she'd never wanted to know. The wind picked up, and she hunched deeper into her coat. Her stomach growled. She'd eaten breakfast at a church, oatmeal and weak coffee, but that had been 12 hours ago. There was a place a few blocks over that sometimes handed out sandwiches around this time, but her feet hurt too much to walk there. Blisters on top of blisters, her shoes falling apart at the seams. Across the street, the old community center sat dark and quiet. It was one of those neighborhood places that tried to be everything. After-school programs, basketball leagues, ESL classes, food pantries. Claire had been inside once, months ago, to ask about their job board. The woman at the front desk had been kind but couldn't help. No openings. Check back next month. She was about to close her eyes, try to doze a little despite the cold, when she smelled it. Smoke. Not cigarette smoke or exhaust fumes. The thick, acrid smell of something burning wrong. Paint, maybe. Plastic. Claire's head snapped up. Across the street, orange light flickered in one of the community center's windows. For a second she thought maybe someone had just turned on a lamp, but the light was moving, dancing. And now she could see thin gray smoke curling out from under the front door. "Shit," she whispered. She stood up too fast, her stiff legs protesting. The building was definitely on fire. The flames were small still, just visible through the ground floor windows, but growing. Someone needed to call 911. Claire patted her pockets uselessly. Her phone had died 3 months ago when she couldn't pay the bill. She looked around for someone else, anyone with a phone, but the street was empty. Then she heard the scream, high-pitched, terrified, a child's voice cutting through the night like a knife. "Help! Somebody help me!" Claire's blood turned to ice. There was a kid inside. She was running before she made a conscious decision to move, her feet pounding across the empty street. Her damaged shoes slapped against the asphalt, and the cold air burned her lungs, but she didn't slow down. The smoke was thicker now, pouring from the edges of the front door. Through the glass panel beside it, Claire could see flames spreading across the lobby, eating up the old wooden furniture and climbing the walls. And there, barely visible through the smoke, was a small figure near the stairs. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, frozen in terror. "Get back!" she yelled, grabbing the door handle. It was hot, almost too hot to touch, but not locked. She yanked it open and a wave of heat and smoke hit her like a physical blow. Her eyes watered instantly. The air tasted like poison. The boy was screaming now, continuous and wordless, his hands over his face. Claire pulled her coat up over her nose and mouth and plunged inside. The heat was unbelievable, like opening an oven and sticking your face inside. The smoke made it almost impossible to see, thick gray clouds that stung her eyes and throat. She kept low, remembering something she'd learned in a school fire drill years ago. Smoke rises, cleaner air stays near the floor. "I'm coming," she shouted, but her voice came out as a croak. "Stay there!" Hey, she couldn't see him anymore. The smoke was too thick, but she could hear him crying, and she followed the sound, crawling across the floor. Her hands touched hot tile, and she jerked back but kept moving. Something crashed behind her. One of the ceiling tiles, maybe, or a light fixture. The fire was spreading fast, too fast. This building was old, probably full of dry wood and ancient electrical wiring. It would be gone in minutes. Her hand hit something soft. Fabric. "Got you," she gasped. The boy was curled in a ball, his whole body shaking. He couldn't have been more than 6, wearing pajamas and a thin jacket. What the hell was a kid his age doing here alone at night? No time to wonder. Claire grabbed him under the arms and tried to lift him, but he was heavier than he looked, and she was weak from hunger and exhaustion. She got him halfway up before her legs buckled. "You have to help me," she told him, coughing. "Can you walk?" He didn't answer, just kept crying. Above them, something groaned. Claire looked up and saw a section of the ceiling starting to sag, the old tiles warping from the heat. "We have to go now." She hauled the boy to his feet, wrapped her arm around his waist, and half dragged, half carried him toward where she thought the door was. But she'd gotten turned around. The smoke was too thick, and she couldn't see anything. The heat pressed in from all sides, and her lungs screamed for clean air. Then she saw it, a faint rectangle of lighter gray in the darkness. The door. She stumbled toward it, the boy's weight pulling her sideways. Her foot caught on something and she nearly fell, but she kept her grip on the kid and kept moving. They were almost there when the ceiling gave way. Claire heard it before she saw it. A crack like thunder, then a roar as debris came crashing down. She threw herself forward, covering the boy's body with her own, and hit the floor hard enough to knock the wind out of her. Something heavy slammed into her back, driving her into the tile. Pain exploded across her shoulders and ribs. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think through the agony. But the boy was under her, protected by her body. She could feel him squirming, still alive. "Get up," she ordered herself. "Get up, get up, get up." She didn't know where the strength came from. Her muscles shouldn't have worked, her lungs shouldn't have filled, but somehow she pushed herself to her hands and knees, the boy still clutched against her chest. The door was right there. Right there. She lunged for it. They tumbled out onto the sidewalk in a heap, gasping and choking. Claire rolled away from the boy and vomited onto the concrete, her body trying to purge the smoke from her system. Everything hurt. Her back felt like someone had beaten it with a baseball bat, and her hands were burned where she'd touched the hot door handle. But she was alive. They were both alive. "Noah!" The voice came from somewhere to her left. A man's voice, desperate and terrified. Claire looked up and saw a crowd gathering. They must have called 911. She could hear sirens approaching, getting louder. People were pointing at the building, at her, at the boy. "Noah!" The man pushed through the crowd and dropped to his knees beside the boy. "Oh God, Noah, are you okay?" He was tall, well-dressed in dark slacks, and a cashmere coat that probably cost more than Claire used to make in a month. His face was pale with fear as he ran his hands over the boy's arms and legs, checking for injuries. The boy, Noah, threw his arms around the man's neck and started sobbing. I'm sorry, I just wanted to see if Mr. Pete was still there. I'm sorry. It's okay. You're safe now." The man held him tight, and Claire saw his hands shaking. A woman in a security uniform ran up, breathing hard. "Mr. Kingston, I'm so sorry. I just stepped away for 2 minutes to use the restroom. I thought he was asleep in the car." "Not now, Vanessa." The man's voice was sharp. He pulled back to look at Noah's face. "Are you hurt? Did you breathe in a lot of smoke?" I think I'm okay. That lady saved me." Noah pointed at Claire. The man's eyes shifted to her for the first time, really seeing her. Claire saw his expression change as he took in her appearance. The filthy coat, the matted hair, the dirt under her fingernails. She saw recognition dawn in his face, not of who she was, but what she was. Homeless. She looked away, shame burning hotter than any fire. "You saved him," the man said quietly. Claire didn't answer. She tried to stand up, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The adrenaline was wearing off, and everything hurt worse now. Her back screamed in protest, and her vision swam. "Don't move." The man's hand landed on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "The paramedics are almost here. You're injured." "I'm fine," Claire managed. Her voice came out rough and raw. "You're not fine. You just ran into a burning building." His eyes held hers, intense and searching. "What's your name?" She didn't want to tell him, didn't want to give this wealthy stranger in his expensive coat any piece of herself. But her brain was foggy from smoke and pain, and the words slipped out before she could stop it. "Claire. Claire." He said it like he was memorizing it. "I'm Adrien Kingston. This is my son, Noah. You saved his life." "Anyone would have—" "No." His voice was hard now, certain. "They wouldn't have. There were people on this street. I can see them standing there watching. You were the only one who went in." Claire didn't know what to say to that. She'd seen the crowd too, now that she thought about it. 20, maybe 30 people, all standing at a safe distance with their phones out, recording, watching. None of them had moved to help. The fire trucks arrived in a screaming rush of red lights and noise. Firefighters poured out. unrolling hoses, shouting orders. An ambulance pulled up behind them, and paramedics ran over with a stretcher and equipment bags. "Ma'am, we need to check you out," one of them said, kneeling beside Claire. She wanted to refuse, to get up and disappear into the crowd before anyone could ask questions she didn't want to answer, but her body wouldn't obey. She let them ease her onto the stretcher, let them shine lights in her eyes and press fingers against her ribs. "Possible broken ribs, second-degree burns on the palms, smoke inhalation," one paramedic said to another. "We need to transport." "No," Claire tried to sit up. "No hospital. I can't afford—" "The hospital bill is covered." Adrien's voice cut through her protest. He was standing beside the ambulance, still holding Noah. "Whatever it costs, send the bills to my office." Claire stared at him. "You don't have to—" "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." The paramedics loaded her into the ambulance before she could argue further. As they closed the doors, the last thing she saw was Adrien Kingston standing in the street, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, and the burning building disappeared behind them. At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, they cleaned her burns and wrapped her hands in gauze. They x-rayed her ribs, 2 cracked but not broken through, and gave her oxygen for the smoke inhalation. A doctor who looked too young to have finished medical school asked her questions about her medical history, her living situation, whether she had insurance. Claire answered mechanically, "No, no insurance, no permanent address, no emergency contact." The doctor's expression softened with pity, which was somehow worse than judgment. They wanted to keep her overnight for observation, but Claire refused. She knew how this worked. Every hour in a hospital bed was money she didn't have, and she didn't trust Adrien Kingston's promise to pay. Rich people made promises all the time. They rarely kept them. "You should really stay," the nurse urged as she signed the discharge papers. "Head injuries from smoke inhalation can be serious." "I'm fine." Claire took the papers with her bandaged hands. They'd given her pain pills, industrial-strength ibuprofen that would probably help with her ribs, an antibacterial ointment for the burns. Small mercies. It was almost midnight when she walked out of the emergency room. The February cold hit her like a slap, and she realized they'd taken her coat, probably thrown it away. It had been falling apart anyway, and now it smelled like smoke. She was wearing a pair of hospital scrubs they'd given her, thin cotton that did nothing against the wind. Her old shoes were gone, too. They'd given her foam slippers instead, the kind that would last maybe a day on the streets before falling apart completely. Claire stood on the sidewalk outside the hospital, shivering, trying to figure out where to go. The shelter would be full by now. She could try the overnight warming center at the church on Ashland, but that was miles away, and she could barely walk. Her ribs hurt with every breath, and her burned hands throbbed despite the painkillers. She was still standing there, frozen with indecision, when a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The back door opened and Adrien Kingston stepped out. Claire's first instinct was to run, but she was too tired, too sore, and honestly too cold to move. Adrien walked up to her slowly, like she was a wild animal he might spook. He was alone this time, no Noah, no security guard. "I told them not to discharge you," he said. "Not your decision." "I know." He pulled off his coat and held it out to her. "Here." Claire stared at the coat. It was beautiful, thick wool, perfectly tailored, probably worth more than every piece of clothing she'd ever owned combined. "I can't take that," she said. "You're standing outside a hospital in February wearing scrubs and foam slippers." "Yes, you can." "I don't want your charity." Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, maybe, though his voice stayed level. "This isn't charity. You saved my son's life. The least I can do is make sure you don't freeze to death in the process." Claire's hands were shaking from the cold. Her teeth had started to chatter. She looked at the coat, then at Adrien's face, then back at the coat. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She took it. The wool was still warm from his body heat. Claire wrapped it around herself and felt some of the bone-deep cold start to ease. "Thank you," she said quietly. Adrien nodded. "Let me give you a ride somewhere, wherever you're staying." "I'm not staying anywhere." The words came out harsher than she meant them to. Adrien's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. "I see," he said carefully. "Then let me take you to a hotel, just for tonight. You need to rest, let your injuries heal." "I said I don't want charity, and I said this isn't charity." His voice hardened slightly. You put your life on the line for my son. I watched the security footage from the building across the street. You ran into that fire without hesitating. You covered Noah's body with your own when the ceiling came down. You have cracked ribs and second-degree burns because you saved him." Claire looked away. Anyone would have... "Stop saying that." Now there was real anger in his voice. "Stop diminishing what you did. It was brave and selfless, and it matters." She didn't know what to say to that. Nobody had told her anything she did mattered in a very long time. Adrien took a breath, visibly calming himself. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap. But I've been looking for you for hours. The hospital wouldn't tell me anything at first because of privacy laws. And then when they finally confirmed you were here, they said you'd already left. I've been driving around the neighborhood hoping to spot you." "Why?" Claire asked. "You thanked me. You paid the hospital bill. We're square." "No," Adrien said quietly. "We're not even close to square. But that's not why I'm here." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He held it out to Claire, and after a moment she took it with her bandaged hand. "Adrien Kingston," it read. "CEO, Kingston Technologies." "I want to offer you a job," Adrien said. Claire almost laughed. The sound came out bitter and broken. "Doing what? I'm a homeless woman with cracked ribs and no ID. What job could you possibly—" "Taking care of Noah." That stopped her cold. Adrien continued, speaking quickly now, like he'd been rehearsing this. "He's 6 years old. I'm a single father, I travel constantly for work, and he's had 4 different nannies in the past year because he won't bond with any of them. He has nightmares, separation anxiety, behavioral issues at school. But tonight, after the paramedics checked him out, you know what he said to me?" Claire shook her head. "He said the lady who saved him had kind eyes. He asked if she was okay, if her hands hurt. He wanted me to make sure you were safe." Adrien's voice roughened slightly. "My son has barely spoken to me in full sentences for the past 6 months. He doesn't trust anyone, but he trusted you enough to let you carry him out of that building. He was terrified. He would have trusted anyone." "No." Adrien's certainty was unshakable. "He wouldn't have. And I need someone like that in his life. Someone he feels safe with." Claire's mind reeled. This was insane. This whole conversation was insane. "I don't have any childcare credentials," she said. "No references, no background check, but you were an elementary school teacher. I had my assistant pull your work history." She stared at him. "You investigated me?" "I wanted to know who saved my son." He didn't sound apologetic. "Claire Dawson taught 3rd grade at Highlands Elementary in Naperville for 4 years. By all accounts, you were excellent at your job. Caring, creative, patient, the kind of teacher kids remember their whole lives." Hearing her old life summarized so clinically made something twist in Claire's chest. That was a long time ago. It was 2 years ago. It was a lifetime ago. They stood in silence for a moment. The wind picked up, and Claire pulled his coat tighter around herself. "I know you've been through hell," Adrien said quietly. "And I know you have no reason to trust me. But I'm asking you to consider this, not as charity, as a job. You'd live in my house, help with Noah's care, maybe tutor him in the evenings. In exchange, you'd have a room, meals, a salary, health insurance. Time to get back on your feet." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "Why?" Claire asked. "Why would you trust a stranger, a homeless stranger, around your kid?" "Because you ran into a burning building to save him." Adrien's eyes held hers. "Because when that ceiling came down, you could have left him and saved yourself, but you didn't. That tells me more about who you are than any background check ever could." Claire wanted to say yes. Every cell in her body was screaming at her to say yes, to grab this impossible lifeline and hold on tight. But she'd learned the hard way that nothing came without strings attached. "What do you really want?" she asked. "Nobody offers a job like this to someone like me without wanting something in return." Adrien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw with something that might have been pain. "I want my son to be happy," he said. "I want him to feel safe. I want him to laugh again, to make friends, to not wake up screaming every night because he thinks I'm going to leave him like his mother did." He swallowed hard. "I've tried everything else. Therapists, medications, routine, structure. Nothing works. But tonight, covered in soot and ash, You got through to him. So I'm asking you to try. That's what I want. That's all I want." The honesty in his voice cracked something open in Claire's chest. She recognized the desperation there. She'd felt it herself, standing in her empty apartment after losing her job, watching her life fall apart and knowing she was powerless to stop it. "I can't promise I'll be any good at this," she said. "I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking you to try." Claire looked down at the business card in her hand, the raised lettering pressed into her bandaged palm. This was crazy. Completely, utterly insane. She should walk away right now before she got pulled into something she couldn't handle. But she was so tired. Tired of being cold and hungry and scared. Tired of sleeping on concrete and wondering if tonight would be the night she didn't wake up. And underneath the tiredness was something else. Something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. "Okay," Claire whispered. Adrien's expression transformed. Relief so profound it was almost painful to witness flooded across his face. "Okay," he repeated. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "I should warn you," Claire said, "I'm probably going to be terrible at this." "That makes two of us." The ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "I'm a disaster at parenting." Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the surreal impossibility of this entire night, Claire felt her lips twitch in something that might have been the start of a smile. "When do I start?" she asked. "Now, if you're willing, I have a guest room ready. We can handle the paperwork tomorrow, get you a new ID, set up direct deposit, all of that." Claire nodded slowly. Her cracked ribs protested the movement, but she ignored them. Adrien opened the SUV door for her and she climbed inside. The leather seats were heated and the warmth seeped into her frozen bones like a prayer answered. As they pulled away from the hospital, Claire watched the city lights blur past the window. She thought about the warehouse loading dock where she'd been sitting just a few hours ago. She thought about the burning building, the screaming child, the moment she'd made the choice to run toward danger instead of away from it. She'd spent 8 months trying to survive. Maybe, just maybe, she was about to learn how to live again. Adrien's house wasn't a house. It was a monument to success, all glass and steel and clean lines perched on a tree-lined street in Lincoln Park where even the sidewalks looked expensive. Claire stared up at it through the SUV window and felt her stomach clench. "This is where you live?" The words came out barely above a whisper. Unfortunately, Adrien's tone was dry. "My ex-wife picked it, said it would be good for business, important clients, all that. Turns out what's good for business isn't always good for a 6-year-old who just wants a backyard to play in." He pulled into an underground garage that could have fit 10 cars easily. Only 3 spots were occupied. The SUV they were in, a silver sedan that looked German and expensive, and a black sports car covered with a fitted tarp. Claire's hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. Her bandaged fingers made it awkward, and she fumbled with the mechanism. Adrien was already out, coming around to her side. He opened the door before she could manage it herself. "Thanks," she muttered, not meeting his eyes. Her foam slippers squeaked on the polished concrete as she followed him to an elevator. An elevator. Inside his house. The ride-up was silent except for the soft mechanical hum. Claire caught sight of herself in the mirrored wall and immediately looked away. Even wrapped in Adrien's expensive coat, she looked like exactly what she was. A homeless woman who'd been sleeping rough for 8 months. Her hair hung in matted tangles, her face was streaked with soot the hospital hadn't quite managed to wash off, and her eyes were red-rimmed from smoke and exhaustion. The elevator opened directly into a living room that probably cost more than most people's houses. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the lights of Chicago spread out like scattered diamonds. The furniture was all sharp angles and neutral colors, the kind of design that looked impressive in magazines and completely sterile in real life. "Noah's asleep upstairs," Adrien said quietly. "Vanessa, the security guard from tonight, she's with him. She feels terrible about what happened." "It wasn't her fault." Claire's voice came out rough. "Kids are fast when they want to be." "That's what I told her." He moved through the living room toward a hallway. "Let me show you the guest room. You should rest." Claire followed him, acutely aware of how out of place she was. Her slippers left faint marks on the hardwood floor. She tried to step more carefully, but that just made her ribs hurt worse. The guest room was at the end of a long hallway, and it was bigger than the apartment she used to share with Jessica. A king-size bed dominated the space, made up with white linens that looked like they'd never been slept on. There was a dresser, a desk, a reading chair by the window. Everything matched. Everything was clean. Everything was perfect. The bathroom's through there, Adrien gestured to a door on the left. I'll have my housekeeper bring up some clothes tomorrow. For tonight, there should be a robe in the closet. Claire stood in the doorway, unable to make herself step inside. It felt wrong, like she was trespassing in someone else's life. I should shower first, she heard herself say. I don't want to get your sheets dirty. Something shifted in Adrien's expression. Not pity exactly, but understanding. Take your time. There are fresh towels in the bathroom, and the shower has a handheld head if it's easier with your ribs. If you need help with the bandages, I'll manage. The words came out sharper than she intended. Adrien nodded slowly. Okay, I'll be in my office down the hall if you need anything. Just call out. He left, pulling the door closed behind him. Claire stood alone in the guest room and tried to remember how to breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Any minute now, she'd wake up on that loading dock, frozen and hungry, and realize this whole night had been a fever dream brought on by hypothermia. But the thick carpet under her slippers felt real. The throb of her cracked ribs felt real. And when she walked to the bathroom and flipped on the light, her reflection in the mirror looked very, very real. She looked like hell. Claire peeled off the hospital scrubs carefully, wincing as the movement pulled at her ribs. The bandages on her hands made everything awkward. She managed to unwrap them after a few tries, revealing angry red burns across both palms. Not as bad as they could have been, but bad enough that touching anything hurt. The shower took her 10 minutes to figure out. There were multiple heads, various knobs and buttons, and she was terrified of breaking something. When she finally got hot water flowing, she stood under the spray and felt 8 months of grime start to wash away. The water at her feet ran gray, then brown, then finally clear. She used the expensive shampoo in the marble caddy. It smelled like cedar and cost more per bottle than she used to spend on groceries in a week. Her hair was so matted that it took 3 rounds of shampoo and conditioner before her fingers could actually run through it. By the time she got out, her skin was pink from the heat and scrubbing. She found the robe Adrien had mentioned, white terry cloth, soft as a cloud. She wrapped herself in it and looked at the discarded hospital scrubs on the floor. She should throw them away. They were garbage, stained and thin and institutional, but they were all she had. Claire picked them up and folded them carefully, then set them on the edge of the sink, just in case. Just in case this whole thing fell apart and she needed something to wear when she left. When she emerged from the bathroom, she found Adrien had left a tray on the desk. A sandwich, turkey and cheese on wheat bread, cut diagonally, a bottle of water, an apple, a small bottle of pain pills with a note in neat handwriting. Take 2. Doctor's orders that you definitely didn't follow at the hospital. Despite everything, Claire felt her mouth twitch. She sat in the desk chair, moving slowly because her ribs screamed with every shift of position, and picked up half of the sandwich. She'd meant to eat slowly, to have some dignity about it. But the first bite hit her empty stomach, and suddenly she was devouring it, barely tasting the food in her desperation to fill the hollow ache inside her. The sandwich disappeared in less than a minute. The apple followed. She drained half the water bottle before forcing herself to slow down. Her hands were shaking again, but not from cold this time. Claire set down the water and pressed her palms against her eyes. She would not cry. She hadn't cried in 8 months. Not when she lost her apartment, not when her cousin kicked her out, not during any of the hundreds of terrible nights on the streets. She wasn't going to start now. But her throat felt tight, and her chest ached with something that had nothing to do with cracked ribs. A soft knock on the door made her jump. Claire, can I come in? She wiped her eyes quickly. Yeah? Adrien opened the door part way, not entering fully. He changed into jeans and a t-shirt, and without the expensive suit, he looked younger, more approachable, more human. I wanted to check on you, he said. Make sure you had everything you needed. The food was good. Thank you. Good. He hesitated, his hand still on the doorknob. I should probably explain a few things about Noah before you see him tomorrow. Claire nodded, pulling the robe tighter around herself. Adrien came in and sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a careful distance. His mother, my ex-wife, Victoria, she left when he was 3. Just walked out one day while I was at work. Left a note saying she'd made a mistake, that she wasn't cut out for motherhood, that she needed to find herself. His jaw tightened. She moved to California. Sends a birthday card once a year, that's it. I'm sorry, Claire said quietly. Don't be. She did us a favor, honestly. Better to leave early than stick around and resent him for 18 years. But the bitterness in his voice suggested he didn't quite believe that. Anyway, Noah took it hard, started having nightmares, separation anxiety. He'd panic whenever I left for work, convinced I wasn't coming back. We tried therapy, but he won't talk to the therapist. Just sits there in silence for 50 minutes. Some kids don't do well with that kind of structured environment, Claire said. They need to feel safe before they can open up. That's what I figured. Adrien ran a hand through his hair. But I don't know how to make him feel safe. I work 70-hour weeks, I travel constantly, and when I'm home, I'm usually distracted by emails or calls or the next crisis. I've tried to pull back, but the company, he cut himself off. That's not an excuse. I should do better. You're doing the best you can. My best isn't good enough. The words came out flat, factual. That's why I'm asking for help. I can build a billion-dollar company, but I can't figure out how to connect with my own kid. It's pathetic. Claire studied him. She'd assumed, looking at the house and the cars and the expensive clothes, that Adrien Kingston had it all figured out, that his life was as polished and perfect as his living room. But sitting here in jeans and a t-shirt, talking about his son with raw honesty, he just looked like a guy who was barely holding it together. Kids don't need perfect, Claire said. They need present. And it sounds like you're trying to be present, even when it's hard. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. No, but it's a start. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, a plane blinked across the night sky. Can I ask you something? Adrien's voice was careful. What happened to you? How did you end up? He gestured vaguely. Homeless? Claire supplied. You can say it. I know what I am. That's not what I meant. Yes, it was. And it's a fair question. She took a breath, wincing as her ribs protested. Short version, medical debt, job loss, bad timing, the usual American dream in reverse. There's a longer version. Yeah, this what Claire looked down at her burned hands. But I'm not ready to tell it yet. To her surprise, Adrien just nodded. Okay. When you are, I'm willing to listen. He stood up, moving toward the door. Try to get some sleep. Noah usually wakes up around 7, and he's an early riser even on weekends. Fair warning, he'll probably be scared when he sees you at first. New people make him anxious. I'll keep my distance until he's ready. Thank you. Adrien paused in the doorway. And Claire? I meant what I said earlier about this being a job, not charity. You're doing me a favor by being here. Don't forget that. After he left, Claire climbed into the bed. The mattress was so soft she almost couldn't feel it, and the pillows smelled like lavender. She should have fallen asleep immediately. Her body was screaming for rest, and she hadn't slept in a real bed in 8 months. But she lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and trying to convince herself this was really happening. When sleep finally came, she dreamed of fire. Morning arrived in shades of gold. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a confused moment Claire didn't know where she was. Then memory rushed back. The fire, the hospital, Adrien's offer, this house that felt like a museum. She sat up too fast and gasped as her ribs reminded her why that was a bad idea. Her phone was, oh, right. She didn't have a phone. She had no idea what time it was. Claire stood carefully and made her way to the window. The street below was quiet except for a man walking a golden retriever and a woman jogging past in expensive athletic wear. Normal people doing normal things on a Saturday morning in a neighborhood where homelessness was something you read about in the news, not something you stepped over on your way to Starbucks. A soft knock on the door made her turn. Claire? A woman's voice, accented and kind. Mr. Kingston asked me to bring you some clothes. Come in. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried a stack of neatly folded clothing. I'm Maria, she said, smiling. I manage the house. Mr. Kingston explained your situation. I hope these fit. I had to guess at sizes. She set the clothes on the bed. Jeans, several t-shirts, a sweater, underwear still in the package, thick socks. All simple, all practical, all brand new. Thank you, Claire managed. There's breakfast downstairs when you're ready. Mr. Kingston is in his office, and Noah is watching cartoons in the media room. Maria's expression softened. He's a sweet boy, quiet, but sweet. I think you'll do well with him. After Maria left, Claire dressed slowly. Everything fit reasonably well. The jeans were a little loose, but after 8 months of irregular meals, most things were loose on her. She finger-combed her hair, which was still damp from her shower the night before, and studied herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked like a person again. Not quite the person she used to be, but closer than she'd been in months. Her hands were the worst part. The burns had blistered overnight, angry and red. She rewrapped them carefully with the gauze and medical tape Maria had thoughtfully included with the clothes. The house was easier to navigate in daylight. Claire made her way downstairs, following the smell of coffee and bacon. The kitchen was all marble and stainless steel, with an island bigger than her old bedroom. Maria was at the stove, cooking what looked like enough breakfast to feed 10 people. "Sit, sit," Maria said, waving a spatula. "You're too skinny. We need to fix that." Claire sat at the island and accepted a plate loaded with scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and fresh fruit. Her stomach, which had shrunk during the months of irregular meals, protested at the sight of so much food. "I can't eat all this," she said. "Eat what you can." Maria poured her a cup of coffee. "Cream? Sugar?" "Black is fine." The coffee was perfect, strong and hot, the kind of quality you could taste. Claire wrapped her bandaged hands around the mug and let the warmth seep into her palms. She managed about half the eggs and one piece of bacon before her stomach called it quits. Maria didn't comment, just cleared the plate and refilled her coffee. "Noah is in the media room," Maria said. "Down the hall, third door on the left. He knows you're here. Mr. Kingston told him this morning." "How did he react?" "He didn't say anything, but he didn't run away either, which for Noah is progress." Claire finished her coffee and stood up. Her ribs hurt less this morning, or maybe the ibuprofen was just doing its job. She made her way down the hall, her sock feet silent on the hardwood. The media room was dimmed, heavy curtains blocking most of the sunlight. A massive television played some cartoon with bright colors and annoying songs. And on the leather couch, curled up in dinosaur pajamas, was Noah. He looked smaller than he had last night. Fragile almost. His dark hair stuck up in the back, and he had one thumb in his mouth despite being clearly too old for it. Claire stood in the doorway, not entering, giving him space. Noah's eyes flicked to her, then back to the TV. He didn't say anything. "Hi," Claire said softly. "I'm Claire. We met last night, but it was pretty crazy. You probably don't remember much." Silence. "Your dad said it was okay if I hung out here for a while. Help out with some stuff. But I won't bother you if you don't want me to." Noah's thumb came out of his mouth. "You got hurt," he said. His voice was small and uncertain. "Yeah. My hands got burned a little, and some ribs got cracked. But I'm okay. Because of me." The guilt in those 3 words broke something in Claire's chest. She moved into the room slowly, not approaching him directly. Instead, she sat on the other end of the couch, leaving plenty of space between them. "Because I made a choice," Claire said. "When I heard you screaming, I chose to run in and help. That's not your fault. That's just what people do when someone needs help." The other people didn't. He was right. The crowd on the street had just stood there, watching. "Some people freeze when they're scared," Claire said. "It doesn't make them bad people. It just means they were too scared to move." "Were you scared?" "Terrified." Claire looked down at her bandaged hands. "I thought we might not make it out, but I couldn't leave you there." Noah considered this. His eyes were the same dark brown as his father's, serious and searching. "Do your hands hurt a lot?" he asked. "A medium amount. The doctor gave me pills that help." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. I'm just glad you're okay." They sat in silence for a while, watching the cartoon. Claire had no idea what was happening on screen, something about talking animals and a quest for a magic crystal, but Noah seemed engrossed. After about 10 minutes, he spoke again. "Do you like mac and cheese?" The question was so unexpected that Claire almost laughed. "Yeah, I like mac and cheese. Maria makes really good mac and cheese, not the box kind. She makes it from scratch with 4 different cheeses and breadcrumbs on top." "That sounds amazing. Maybe she could make it for lunch." Noah glanced at her sideways. "If you're staying for lunch." "I'd like that." Something in Noah's shoulders relaxed slightly. He settled back into the couch cushions, his attention returning to the TV. Claire stayed where she was, not pushing, not demanding conversation, just present. They sat like that for another hour, sharing the couch and the cartoons and the quiet. And when Noah's hand slowly crept across the cushions to rest near hers, not touching, but close, Claire felt like maybe, just maybe, she might actually be able to do this. Around noon, Adrien appeared in the doorway. He looked between Claire and Noah, taking in the scene, and something in his expression shifted. "Hey, buddy," he said. "Maria says lunch is ready." Noah scrambled off the couch. "Is it mac and cheese?" "It is. She made it special just for you." "And Claire?" Noah looked back at her. "She's staying for lunch, too." "Of course she is." Adrien's eyes met Claire's over his son's head, and she saw relief there. Gratitude. Hope. They ate lunch in the formal dining room, which felt absurd. 3 people rattling around a table that could seat 12. But the mac and cheese was as good as Noah had promised, rich and creamy with a perfectly crispy top. Noah ate 3 helpings and actually smiled when Maria brought out chocolate chip cookies for dessert. "These are the best cookies in the world," Noah informed Claire seriously. "Maria won a prize for them once." "Second place at the church baking contest," Maria corrected, but she looked pleased. "Second place is still a prize," Noah insisted. After lunch, Noah wanted to show Claire his room. Adrien started to intervene. She should rest, her ribs needed time to heal, but Claire shook her head. "I'm okay," she said quietly. "Let him." Noah's room was the only space in the house that felt lived in. Toys scattered across the floor, books piled on the nightstand, drawings taped to the walls. A Lego city covered most of one desk, intricate and detailed. "Did you build that?" Claire asked, genuinely impressed. Noah nodded. "It's supposed to be Chicago. See? That's the Willis Tower, and that's Navy Pier, and that's—" He launched into an enthusiastic explanation of his Lego city, pointing out various landmarks and buildings. Claire knelt beside the desk, ignoring the protest from her ribs, and listened. She asked questions, made observations, let him explain the details of his construction. When he finally wound down, she said, "You're really good at this. Do you want to be an architect when you grow up?" Noah shrugged. "Maybe. Or an engineer like my dad." "Your dad's an engineer?" "He has a degree in computer engineering, but now he mostly just has meetings and talks on the phone." Noah's tone suggested he didn't think much of this career path. They spent the rest of the afternoon in Noah's room. Claire sat on the floor while Noah played with various toys, narrating elaborate stories involving dinosaurs, spaceships, and inexplicably, a family of rabbits. She didn't try to direct his play, just listened and occasionally asked clarifying questions about plot points. Around 4 o'clock, Noah climbed onto his bed and lay down without being asked. "I'm not tired," he announced, even as his eyes drooped. "Okay," Claire said. "I'm just resting my eyes." "Makes sense." Within 5 minutes, he was asleep. Claire stood up carefully and found Adrien standing in the doorway. He'd clearly been watching for a while. "How long has he been going without naps?" Claire asked quietly. "Since he was 4. He fights them tooth and nail." Adrien stared at his sleeping son with an expression Claire couldn't quite read. "How did you—" "I didn't do anything. He just felt safe enough to sleep." They moved into the hallway, leaving Noah's door cracked open. "The nanny I had before last quit because he screamed every time she tried to put him down for quiet time," Adrien said. "The one before that gave up after he threw a tantrum so bad she called me crying from the bathroom where she'd locked herself." "He's not a bad kid. He's just scared." "Scared of what?" "Being left again." Claire leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. His mom walked out. In his head, everyone walks out eventually. So he tests people, pushes them, sees how much they can take before they give up on him too. Adrien's jaw tightened. "I would never—" "I know that. You know that. But he's 6. He doesn't have the emotional framework to understand that intellectually. He just knows his mom left, and no nanny has stayed longer than a few months, and the one constant in his life is you, but you're also gone a lot for work. So his world feels unstable. What do I do?" The question came out rough, almost desperate. Claire met his eyes. "You keep showing up, every day, even when it's hard, even when he pushes you away. You stay consistent, and eventually he'll believe you're not leaving." "That's it? Just keep showing up?" "It's harder than it sounds." Adrien let out a long breath. "You sound like you know what you're talking about. My dad left when I was 8, walked out one day for cigarettes and never came back. Textbook abandonment." Claire's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes were distant. Took me years to trust anyone after that. I pushed everyone away, convinced they'd leave eventually anyway. Might as well control when it happened. What changed? I had a teacher in 6th grade, Mrs. Patterson. I was awful to her, mouthy, defiant, refused to do homework, but she just kept showing up. Every day, same kind voice, same patient smile. Took me the whole school year to believe she actually cared. But when I finally did, Claire shrugged. It changed everything. She's the reason I became a teacher. Adrien was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry about your dad. Don't be. He did me a favor. Taught me who not to be. Still, you deserved better. Something about the quiet certainty in his voice made Claire's throat tight. She looked away, blinking hard. Noah deserves better too, she said. And he's got you. That's already something. They stood in the hallway as the afternoon light slanted through the windows, turning everything golden. From Noah's room came the soft sound of his breathing, steady and peaceful. Stay for dinner, Adrien said. It wasn't quite a question. Claire knew she should ask about the job details they'd skipped over last night. Salary, hours, specific responsibilities. All the practical things that would make this arrangement real and official. But watching Adrien look at his sleeping son with such naked love and worry, she didn't have the heart to bring up contracts and payment schedules. Okay, she said simply, I'll stay. Dinner was quieter than lunch. Noah was still sleepy from his unexpected nap, and Adrien was distracted by work emails he kept checking on his phone. Claire ate Maria's pot roast and tried not to feel like an intruder. After dinner, Noah wanted to watch a movie. He picked an animated film about a lost robot, and they settled on the couch together. Noah in the middle, Adrien on one side, Claire on the other. Halfway through, Noah's head drooped onto Claire's shoulder. She froze, not wanting to wake him. Adrien noticed and smiled slightly. He doesn't usually... Adrien stopped. That's new? Claire carefully adjusted her position so Noah could lean more comfortably against her. Her ribs complained, but she ignored them. They finished the movie in silence. When the credits rolled, Adrien carefully lifted Noah and carried him upstairs to bed. Claire stayed on the couch, staring at the darkened TV screen and trying to process the strange turn her life had taken in less than 24 hours. Adrien came back down a few minutes later. He's out cold, he reported. Didn't even wake up when I changed him into pajamas. That's good. That's a miracle. Adrien sat down on the other end of the couch, maintaining the distance. We should probably talk about the actual job. Make sure we're on the same page. Claire nodded, grateful he'd brought it up first. I'm offering you $40,000 a year to start, Adrien said. Room and board included, plus health insurance and a phone. Your primary responsibility would be Noah, making sure he's fed, helping with homework, generally being present when I can't be, which is often. $40,000. Claire tried to remember what that would have felt like back when she had a teaching job and rent to pay. It had seemed like barely enough then. Now it sounded like a fortune. What about boundaries, she asked. Working hours, time off, that kind of thing. Honestly, I'm figuring this out as I go. I've never had live-in help before. The nannies all went home at night. But I'd say generally Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, and maybe occasional evenings or weekends if I have business travel. But we can be flexible. And if it doesn't work out, if Noah decides he hates me after a week? Adrien's expression was serious. Then we figure something else out, but I don't think that's going to happen. You don't know that. No, he agreed. But I've got a pretty good instinct for people. Goes with the territory when you're building a company. You have to know who to trust, and I trust you. You barely know me. I know you ran into a burning building for my son. I know you've been living on the streets for 8 months and somehow haven't lost your compassion or your ability to connect with a traumatized kid. That tells me everything I need to know. Claire wanted to argue, to point out all the ways she was broken and damaged and definitely not qualified for this. But exhaustion was catching up with her, and the couch was comfortable, and for the first time in months she felt warm and safe and fed. Okay, she said quietly. I'll try. That's all I'm asking. Adrien stood up, offering his hand to help her up. She took it carefully, mindful of her burns, and let him pull her to her feet. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow we'll work on getting you a new ID and setting up a bank account. All the boring administrative stuff. Claire made her way back to the guest room. Her room, she supposed, at least for now. She changed into the soft pajamas Maria had left folded on the bed and climbed under the covers. Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness. Inside, the house was quiet, except for the hum of the heating system and the distant sound of Adrien's footsteps in another part of the house. Claire closed her eyes and tried to believe this was really happening. That maybe, after 8 months of hell, she'd finally caught a break. She fell asleep before she could think too hard about all the ways it could still go wrong. The nightmare started on the third night. Claire woke to screaming, her heart slamming against her ribs before her brain fully processed what was happening. For one confused moment, she thought she was back in the burning building, but then the silk sheets and soft mattress registered, and she remembered where she was. Noah. She was out of bed and running before she'd fully woken up, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. Adrien was already in Noah's room when she got there, sitting on the edge of the bed with his son clutched against his chest. "It's okay, buddy. It's okay. You're safe," Adrien murmured, rocking slightly. "Just a dream, just a bad dream." But Noah was inconsolable, sobbing into his father's shoulder with the kind of desperate fear that no 6-year-old should have to feel. His whole body shook with it. Claire stood in the doorway, uncertain. She'd only been here 3 days. She had no right to intrude on this moment. Then Noah's tear-streaked face turned toward her, and something in his expression made her move without thinking. She crossed to the bed and sat down on Noah's other side, close but not touching. "Hey," she said softly. "Pretty scary dream, huh?" Noah nodded, hiccuping. "Want to tell me about it?" "You were gone," Noah whispered. "I came downstairs and you were gone, and Dad said you left because I was bad and you weren't coming back." The words hit Claire like a physical blow. She glanced at Adrien and saw her own pain reflected in his face. "Oh, honey." Claire reached out slowly, giving Noah time to pull away if he wanted. When he didn't, she rested her hand on his shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here." "But you will. Everyone leaves." "Not everyone." Claire's throat felt tight. "Your dad's still here. Maria's still here. And I'm planning to stick around for a good long while, if you'll have me." "You promise?" The question hung in the air between them. Claire knew better than to make promises she might not be able to keep. Life had taught her that lesson the hard way. But looking at Noah's terrified face, she couldn't bring herself to hedge. "I promise," she said. "Cross my heart." Noah studied her for a long moment, then launched himself from Adrien's arms into hers. Claire caught him reflexively, ignoring the stab of pain from her still-healing ribs. He was warm and small and shaking, and holding him felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Can you stay?" Noah asked, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "Until I fall asleep?" Claire looked at Adrien, who nodded. "Of course I can." Adrien stood up, looking exhausted and grateful in equal measure. "I'll be right across the hall if you need me." After he left, Claire settled back against Noah's headboard. Noah curled against her side. She started humming without really thinking about it, an old lullaby her mother used to sing, back before the heart attack, back when things were simpler. "What song is that?" Noah asked drowsily. "Something my mom used to sing to me when I had bad dreams." "Did you have bad dreams a lot?" "Sometimes, when I was scared or sad or worried about things." "What were you scared of?" Claire thought about how to answer that honestly without dumping adult anxieties on a 6-year-old. "Lots of things. Being alone, people not liking me, not being good enough." "Are you still scared of those things?" "Yeah," Claire admitted. "But I'm learning they're not as scary when you have people who care about you." Noah was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too, buddy. Me too." She kept humming until his breathing evened out and his body went heavy with sleep. Even then, she stayed for another 20 minutes, just to be sure. When she finally crept back to her own room, she found Adrien waiting in the hallway. He'd been leaning against the wall, and he straightened when he saw her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "He hasn't let anyone comfort him like that since—" He stopped. "Well, since his mother." "He's scared," Claire said, "and he's testing me, making sure I'll actually stay. Will you?" The question was simple, but the weight behind it was enormous. "I already promised him I would," Claire said. "I don't break promises to kids." Something in Adrien's expression shifted. "Good. That's good." They stood in the dim hallway, neither quite willing to go back to bed yet. Does he have nightmares often? Claire asked. 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes more. Adrien ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up in messy spikes. The therapist says it's normal for kids who've experienced abandonment, that he's processing trauma, but knowing it's normal doesn't make it any easier to watch. No, Claire agreed. It doesn't. I usually sit with him until he falls back asleep, but he's never... Adrien gestured helplessly. He's never asked anyone else to stay before. He's starting to trust me. That's good. Yeah. Adrien's smile was tired but genuine. It is. The next morning brought the administrative nightmare Claire had been dreading. Adrien's assistant, a brisk woman named Jennifer, who wore designer suits and spoke in clipped, efficient sentences, arrived at 9 sharp with a folder full of paperwork. We'll need to get you a new driver's license, Jennifer said, barely looking up from her tablet. Birth certificate for verification, social security card, background check, tax forms. Do you have any of your original documents? Claire shook her head. They were in my apartment when I got evicted. Everything went to storage, and when I couldn't pay the fees, they auctioned it all off. Jennifer's expression didn't change, but she made a note. We can request copies from the state. It'll take a few weeks. In the meantime, I'll need you to fill out these forms. The stack of papers was intimidating. Claire sat at the dining room table and worked through them slowly, her burned hands making writing awkward. Name, previous address, social security number, employment history, references. She hesitated on the last one. References. Who could she possibly put? Jessica wouldn't vouch for her now. Her old principal probably didn't even remember her name. Just leave it blank, Adrien said, appearing over her shoulder. I'm not going to check your references. I already know you're qualified. You don't know that? You taught 3rd grade for 4 years. You have a degree in elementary education from Northwestern. You were voted Teacher of the Year your 2nd year at Highlands. He said it casually, like he hadn't memorized her entire work history. That's more qualified than any nanny I've ever hired. Claire set down her pen. You really did investigate me. I told you I did. I thought you were exaggerating. I don't exaggerate about my son's safety. Adrien pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. But if it makes you feel better, the background check came back clean. No criminal record, no red flags, just a string of bad luck that could have happened to anyone. Bad luck, Claire repeated. Is that what we're calling it? What would you call it? A complete systematic failure. Medical debt shouldn't destroy someone's life. Losing a job shouldn't lead to homelessness. But here we are. Adrien was quiet for a moment. You're right. The system's broken. But that doesn't mean you deserved what happened to you. Doesn't matter what I deserved. It happened anyway. It matters to me. The intensity in his voice made Claire look up. Adrien was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite parse. Something between anger and determination. I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again, he said. To you or anyone else who works for me. Full health coverage, living wages, housing assistance if needed. The works. You can't fix the whole world. No, but I can fix my corner of it. Before Claire could respond, Noah bounded into the dining room wearing mismatched socks and carrying a stuffed dinosaur. Maria says breakfast is ready, and if we don't come now, the pancakes will get cold, and she won't make more because wasting food is a sin. Adrien's serious expression melted into a smile. Better not commit any pancake-related sins, then. They ate breakfast together, fluffy pancakes with fresh berries and real maple syrup. Noah chattered about his Lego plans for the day, and Adrien checked his phone approximately every 30 seconds until Claire finally asked if he needed to go into the office. No, Adrien said, setting his phone face down on the table. I'm taking the weekend off. Completely off. Jennifer's under strict orders not to call me unless something's actively on fire. Has something ever actually been on fire? Claire asked. Metaphorically? All the time. Literally? Only once, and it was a small electrical fire in the server room that was out before the fire department even arrived. Noah giggled. Dad hates fire drills. He always complains about them. Because they're always scheduled during important meetings, Adrien protested. Safety is more important than meetings, Noah said, in the tone of someone reciting a lesson he'd been taught many times. Yes, it is, Adrien agreed, ruffling his son's hair, which is why we do the drills. Watching them together, Claire felt something loosen in her chest. They were good together when Adrien wasn't distracted by work. He was patient with Noah's endless questions, engaged with his son's interests, present in a way that clearly meant everything to the boy. The problem, Claire was beginning to realize, wasn't that Adrien was a bad father. It was that he was spread too thin, trying to be a single parent and run a billion-dollar company simultaneously. After breakfast, Noah wanted to go to the park. Adrien agreed immediately, then looked at Claire. "You up for it? No pressure if your ribs still hurt." "I'm okay," Claire said. "Fresh air sounds good." They walked to the park, a sprawling green space with elaborate playground equipment and a small pond where ducks congregated, hoping for breadcrumbs. Noah ran ahead, his dinosaur tucked under one arm, making a beeline for the swings. "He loves those swings," Adrien said. "Could spend hours on them if we let him." Claire watched Noah climb onto a swing and start pumping his legs, building momentum. "Does he have friends? Kids from school he plays with?" "Not really." Adrien's expression clouded. "He's had trouble connecting with other kids, gets anxious in social situations, tends to play alone during recess." "Have you talked to his teacher about it?" "Multiple times. She's sympathetic but says there's only so much she can do. He's not disruptive, so he's not a priority." Claire felt a familiar anger kindle in her chest. She'd seen it happen too many times during her teaching years, quiet kids who struggled socially, falling through the cracks, while teachers focused on the ones who acted out. "What if we set up some play dates?" she suggested. "One-on-one situations where he'd feel less overwhelmed." "I've tried. The other parents—" Adrien stopped, clearly choosing his words carefully. "Let's just say they're not eager to have their kids play with the weird quiet boy who sometimes has meltdowns." "Screw them," Claire said with more heat than she intended. "Their kids are probably boring anyway." Adrien laughed, surprised. "Probably. But it's hard watching him be lonely." "Yeah," Claire said softly. "It is." They sat on a bench while Noah swung higher and higher, his laughter carrying across the playground. Other families were there, couples with toddlers, a group of teenagers playing basketball, an elderly man feeding the ducks. Normal Saturday morning park activities. Claire tried to remember the last time she'd done something this mundane. Just sitting in the sun, watching kids play, not worrying about where her next meal would come from or whether it was safe to fall asleep. It felt surreal, like she'd stepped into someone else's life. "Can I ask you something?" Adrien's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Sure." "Why did you run into that building?" He wasn't looking at her, his eyes fixed on Noah. "You had no obligation to help. You could have walked away." Claire considered the question. "I heard a kid screaming. What else was I supposed to do?" "Most people would have called 911 and waited." "I didn't have a phone." "You still could have just—" He gestured vaguely. "Waited for someone else to handle it." "While a 6-year-old burned to death?" Claire shook her head. "I couldn't do that. I've lost a lot of things, but I haven't lost the part of me that knows when something's wrong and needs to be fixed." "Even at the risk of your own life?" "Especially then." She looked down at her bandaged hands. "When you've got nothing left to lose, it's easier to be brave." "You had plenty to lose. Your life matters, Claire." The certainty in his voice startled her. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "I know you well enough to know you're wrong." Before Claire could formulate a response, Noah came running over, breathless and grinning. "Push me," he demanded. "I want to go really high." Adrien stood up immediately. "You got it, buddy." Claire watched them together, Adrien pushing the swing while Noah shrieked with delighted laughter, both of them caught up in the simple joy of a perfect moment. Something warm and painful twisted in her chest. This was what she'd lost when she'd lost her job, her apartment, her life. Not just the material things, but moments like this. The casual weekend mornings, the easy affection, the sense of belonging somewhere. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of something. The week that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Claire woke early each morning, helped Maria with breakfast, and got Noah ready for school. Adrien left for the office by 7, usually not returning until after dinner. Claire spent her days cleaning the house, not because anyone asked her to, but because she needed something to do with her hands and her mind. Maria protested at first, insisting that was her job, but eventually accepted Claire's help with good grace. They worked together in comfortable silence, Maria sharing stories about her 3 grown children and 7 grandchildren, while Claire listened and learned the house's routines. In the afternoons, Claire picked Noah up from school. The first time she showed up at the pickup line, the other parents stared. By the third day, they'd stopped staring and started whispering instead. Claire ignored them. She'd learned long ago that people would judge regardless of what you did, so you might as well do what was right and let them think whatever they wanted. Noah always came out of school with his backpack dragging on the ground and his shirt untucked. The first thing he'd ask was always the same. "Did you stay?" "I stayed," Claire would confirm, and Noah's whole body would relax. They'd go home and have a snack, apple slices with peanut butter, or crackers and cheese, or sometimes cookies if Maria was feeling generous. Then homework, which Noah approached with the enthusiasm of someone walking to their own execution. "I hate math," he announced on Thursday, glaring at a worksheet full of addition problems. "Math's not so bad once you get the hang of it," Claire said. "That's what Dad says. But Dad's an engineer. He likes math. It's weird." Claire bit back a smile. "What if we make it more interesting? Like, instead of just numbers, what if each problem is about dinosaurs?" Noah's head snapped up. "How?" "Okay, so this one says 5 plus 3. Let's say you have 5 T-Rexes and 3 Velociraptors. How many dinosaurs do you have total?" Noah considered this seriously. 8 dinosaurs. But the T-Rexes would probably eat the Velociraptors, so really you'd end up with just 5 fat T-Rexes. Let's stick with the math for now and worry about dinosaur dietary habits later. It worked. Noah plowed through his homework in record time when every problem involved dinosaurs, spaceships, or his Lego city. Claire made a mental note to mention it to his teacher. Evenings were quieter. Adrien usually made it home by 7, looking exhausted and rumpled. He'd change out of his suit, have dinner with them, and then spend an hour with Noah before bedtime, reading stories, building Legos, or just talking about their days. Claire tried to give them space during this time, retreating to her room or helping Maria in the kitchen. But sometimes Noah would seek her out, wanting her to join in on the bedtime story or see the latest addition to his Lego city. "You don't have to include me," Claire told Adrien one evening after Noah had specifically requested she listen to his reading practice. "This is your time with him." "He wants you there," Adrien said simply. "And honestly, it's easier with 2. Tag team parenting." "I'm not a parent." "You're the closest thing to a co-parent I've had since Victoria left." He said it matter-of-factly, but Claire saw something vulnerable in his expression. "Is that weird? Is this whole situation weird?" "Completely," Claire admitted. "But I don't think weird is necessarily bad." "No," Adrien agreed. "It's just different." Different became normal faster than Claire expected. By the end of the second week, she could navigate the house in the dark, knew exactly how Noah liked his sandwiches cut, and had memorized Adrien's coffee order: black, 2 sugars, extra hot. She'd also started to notice things, small details that told bigger stories, like how Adrien's hands shook slightly when he got stressed, or how he'd retreat to his office after particularly difficult phone calls and wouldn't emerge for hours. How he kept a photo of Noah as a baby on his desk, but no pictures of Victoria anywhere in the house. How he'd check his phone obsessively when he was worried about something but couldn't talk about what was bothering him. And Noah. Noah had tells too. The way he'd go quiet and withdrawn when other kids from school were mentioned. How he'd touch Claire's arm or hand periodically throughout the day, as if confirming she was still there. The nightmare frequency had decreased but hadn't stopped entirely. On Friday evening of the second week, Adrien came home early, just after 5, which was practically unprecedented. "I have a business dinner tonight," he explained, already looking apologetic. "Investors from Tokyo. I tried to reschedule, but—" "It's fine," Claire interrupted. "That's literally what you hired me for." "I know, but I hate leaving him." "He'll survive. We'll order pizza and watch a movie. It'll be fun." Adrien hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. I should be back by 10 at the latest. Call me if—" "I know. If anything goes wrong, I'll call, but nothing's going to go wrong." Famous last words. Everything was fine until bath time. Noah had been in a good mood all evening, chattering happily through dinner and laughing at the movie they'd picked. But when Claire suggested it was time to get ready for bed, his whole demeanor changed. "No," he said flatly. "I don't want to take a bath." "You don't have to take a bath. A quick shower is fine." "I don't want to shower either." Claire kept her voice calm and even. "Buddy, you've got marker on your hands from your art project, and what I'm pretty sure is ketchup in your hair. You need to wash up." "No!" Noah's voice rose. You can't make me. You're right. I can't make you, but your dad's rule is bath or shower every night, and I'm not going to break his rules. I don't care about Dad's stupid rules. Noah's face was flushed, his hands balled into fists. Claire recognized the signs. This was heading toward a meltdown. Okay, she said carefully. Let's take a breath. What's really going on here? You like baths, usually. I don't want you to leave. The words burst out of him, raw and desperate. If I go to bed, you might leave while I'm sleeping. And there it was, the real fear underneath the defiance. Claire sat down on the floor, putting herself at Noah's eye level. Hey, look at me. Noah's lower lip was trembling, but he met her eyes. I'm not going anywhere, Claire said firmly. I'm going to be here when you go to sleep, and I'm going to be here when you wake up. I promise. Dad promised to be here tonight, and he's not. Your dad had to work. That's different than leaving. He's coming back. How do you know? Because he always comes back, and so will I. Claire held out her hand. Tell you what, how about you take your bath, and I'll sit right outside the bathroom door the whole time. You can talk to me through the door so you know I'm there. Noah considered this, sniffling. You won't leave? Even for a second? Not even for a second. Promise? Cross my heart. The bath took 45 minutes because Noah kept stopping to make sure Claire was still there. She sat on the hallway floor with her back against the wall, responding to his periodic, Claire? Are you there? With endless patience. When he finally emerged, clean and wrapped in a towel, his eyes were red-rimmed but calmer. See, Claire said, I stayed. Yeah, Noah whispered. You did. Getting him into pajamas and through teeth brushing was easier. By the time Claire tucked him into bed, he was yawning, the earlier meltdown draining what energy he had left. Will you stay until I fall asleep? He asked, the same request he'd made every night since the nightmare. Of course. Claire settled into the chair beside his bed, picking up the book they'd been reading, something about a mouse who wanted to be a knight. She made it through 3 pages before Noah interrupted. Claire? Yeah, buddy. I'm glad you're here. The simple statement hit her square in the chest. I'm glad I'm here too. Even though I yelled at you? You were scared. Scared people sometimes yell. It's okay. Mom used to yell a lot, Noah said quietly. Before she left, she'd yell at me and at Dad, and then she'd cry and say she was sorry, but then she'd yell again the next day. Claire set down the book, giving him her full attention. That must have been really confusing. I thought it was my fault, that I made her mad. Oh, honey, no. Claire leaned forward. Adults yell because of adult stuff going on inside them. It's never a kid's fault. Dad says that too. Noah pulled his blanket up to his chin. But sometimes I still think maybe if I'd been better, she would have stayed. Your mom leaving had nothing to do with you. You were 3 years old. 3-year-olds don't make people leave. People leave because of their own problems. Do you have problems like the kind that make people leave? The question caught Claire off guard. Yeah, she admitted. I've got some problems, but none of them are going to make me leave you. How do you know? Because my problems are about me, not about you. And I've learned that running away doesn't fix anything. It just moves the problems to a different location. Noah thought about this seriously. Like when I tried to run away from math homework by hiding in my closet, but the homework was still there when I came out? Despite the heaviness of the conversation, Claire smiled. Exactly like that. Okay. Noah yawned again, his eyes starting to droop. Can you keep reading now? Claire picked up the book and continued the story of the Mouse Knight. By the time she finished the chapter, Noah was asleep, his breathing deep and even. She stayed anyway, watching him sleep and thinking about everything he'd said. The casual way he'd mentioned his mother's yelling, the deep-seated belief that he'd somehow caused her departure. The daily anxiety that everyone else would leave too. 6 years old and already carrying so much weight. Claire knew that weight. She'd carried a different version of it her whole life, the conviction that she was somehow fundamentally unlovable, that people would inevitably leave once they saw who she really was. It was part of why she'd pushed everyone away when things got hard. Better to leave first than be left. But sitting here in Noah's room, watching him sleep peacefully for once, Claire felt something shift inside her. Maybe the answer wasn't running away from connection. Maybe it was running toward it, even when it was scary. Especially when it was scary. Adrien came home just after 10. as promised. Claire heard the front door open and his footsteps on the stairs. She was in the hallway when he reached the landing, and he looked relieved to see her. "How was he?" Adrien asked quietly. "He had a rough patch at bath time, meltdown about me leaving." Claire filled him in on the details. "But we got through it. He's been asleep for about an hour." Adrien moved to Noah's doorway, looking in at his sleeping son. "I hate that he's so anxious." "It's getting better, though. 2 weeks ago, he wouldn't have been able to tell me what he was really afraid of. Tonight, he could verbalize it." "That's progress?" "That's huge progress." Claire leaned against the wall. "How was your dinner?" "Long, boring. The Tokyo investors want to expand into markets we're not ready for yet, and they don't want to hear that we need another year of development." He rubbed his eyes tiredly. "Sorry, you don't need to hear about work stuff." "I don't mind." They stood in the hallway, both tired, neither quite ready to call it a night yet. "Can I ask you something?" Adrien said. When Noah mentioned his mother yelling, did he say anything else about her? Claire hesitated. She didn't want to betray Noah's confidence, but Adrien deserved to know what his son was dealing with. He said he sometimes thinks it was his fault she left, that if he'd been better, she would have stayed. Adrien's face went pale. Jesus. I told him that wasn't true, that her leaving had nothing to do with him. I've told him that 100 times. Why doesn't he believe me? Because he's 6, and 6-year-olds think the world revolves around them. If something bad happens, it must be because of something they did. Claire's voice was gentle. He'll understand eventually. You just have to keep saying it until he does. What if eventually isn't soon enough? What if he grows up thinking... Adrien stopped, his jaw working. He won't, because he's got you, and now he's got me, and we're going to keep showing him every day that he's worth staying for. Claire surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. He's going to be okay, Adrien. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but he will. Adrien looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. You're good at this. Better than you give yourself credit for. I'm just doing my job. No, Adrien said quietly. You're doing a lot more than that. The weight of his words hung between them, and Claire suddenly felt very aware of how close they were standing, how quiet the house was, how his eyes were the kind of dark brown you could get lost in if you weren't careful. She took a step back. I should get some sleep, she said. Early morning tomorrow. Yeah, of course. Adrien cleared his throat. Thanks again, for tonight, for everything. That's what you pay me for. She was halfway to her room when his voice stopped her. Claire? She turned. I'm really glad you're here. I don't think I've said that clearly enough, but I am. Claire's throat felt tight. Me too, she managed. Good night, Adrien. Good night. She closed her bedroom door and leaned against it, her heart beating faster than it should have been. This was her job. That was all it was. She was the hired help, the nanny, the woman he'd pulled off the streets out of gratitude and maybe pity. Getting confused about that would be a disaster. But as Claire climbed into bed and pulled the covers up to her chin, she couldn't quite shake the warmth that had bloomed in her chest at the look in Adrien's eyes. She fell asleep telling herself it didn't mean anything, and almost believing it. The shift happened so gradually that Claire almost didn't notice it at first. Small things, barely worth mentioning. Adrien started coming home earlier, 6 instead of 8, sometimes even 5:30. He'd walk through the door and immediately seek out Noah, scooping him up for a hug that made the boy shriek with laughter. But his eyes would always find Claire too, just for a second. A quick glance, a small smile, an acknowledgement that she was there. It shouldn't have meant anything. It was just politeness, basic human decency. But Claire felt it anyway, that flutter of warmth in her chest that she kept trying to ignore. 3 weeks into her new life, Noah's school called. Claire was folding laundry when her new phone, courtesy of Adrien's assistant, Jennifer, buzzed with an unknown number. Ms. Dawson, this is Principal Hendricks at Westbrook Academy. We need you to come pick up Noah. There's been an incident. Claire's stomach dropped. Is he hurt? No, he's fine physically, but there was an altercation with another student, and our policy requires he be sent home for the rest of the day. The drive to the school took 15 minutes that felt like an hour. Claire's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Noah didn't fight. He barely talked to other kids, let alone got into physical altercations with them. The principal's office was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood furniture, diplomas on the wall, the faint smell of old books and nervous children. Noah sat in a chair outside the main office, his legs swinging and not quite reaching the floor. His face was blotchy from crying, and there was a rip in his shirt sleeve. "Hey, buddy," Claire said softly, kneeling in front of him. "You okay?" Noah's lip trembled. "I didn't mean to. He kept saying mean things and I told him to stop, but he wouldn't, and then he pushed me and I—" His voice cracked. "It's okay. We'll figure it out." Claire squeezed his hand gently, then stood to face Principal Hendricks, who had emerged from her office looking stern and disapproving. "Ms. Dawson, thank you for coming so quickly. Noah struck another student during recess. We have a zero-tolerance policy for violence." "What happened before he struck the student?" Claire asked, keeping her voice level. Principal Hendricks blinked. "I'm sorry?" "You said Noah struck another student. I'm asking what led up to that. What was said, what was done." "That's irrelevant to—" "It's completely relevant." Claire felt her teacher instincts kicking in, the part of her that had gone to bat for struggling students more times than she could count. Noah doesn't have a history of violence, so either something happened to provoke this, or he suddenly developed aggressive tendencies overnight. Which seems more likely to you? The principal's expression tightened. The other child, Marcus, says he was simply playing when Noah attacked him unprovoked. "And what does Noah say?" "Noah hasn't been willing to talk to us about it." Claire looked down at Noah, who was staring at his shoes with fierce concentration. "Can I have a minute alone with him?" Principal Hendricks hesitated, then nodded curtly. 5 minutes. My office is right here if you need me." After she left, Claire sat down in the chair beside Noah. She didn't say anything at first, just waited. Sometimes silence was more powerful than questions. Finally, Noah spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus said you were going to leave, that you were just pretending to like me because Dad pays you. He said his mom told him you were homeless and probably crazy, and I should stay away from you." The words hit Claire like a slap. She'd known the other parents were gossiping. She'd seen the looks, heard the whispers cut off when she approached. But knowing Noah had to hear it, had to defend her against it, made rage burn hot in her chest. "What else did Marcus say?" she asked carefully. "He said homeless people were dirty and lazy, and that's why they don't have houses. He said you probably stole things, and Dad was stupid for letting you around me." Noah's hands were clenched into fists. "I told him he was wrong, that you saved my life, and you're nice, and you're my friend. But he just laughed and pushed me and said I was stupid too. So you pushed him back." "I didn't mean to push him so hard. He fell down and scraped his knee and started crying, and the teacher came and—" Noah's voice broke. "Am I in really bad trouble?" Claire pulled him into a hug, feeling his small body shake against hers. "You're not in trouble with me. What Marcus said was mean and wrong, and you were right to defend yourself and me, but hitting isn't the answer, even when people say terrible things." "I know," Noah mumbled into her shoulder. "I know hitting is wrong. I just got so mad." "Being angry is okay. Anger is a normal feeling, but we have to find better ways to express it than hurting people, even when they hurt us first." Claire pulled back to look at him. "Want to know what I do when people say mean things about me?" Noah nodded. "I remember that people who say mean things are usually scared or hurt or angry about something in their own lives. It's not really about me at all. They're just taking their bad feelings out on whoever's nearby." Claire wiped a tear from Noah's cheek. "Marcus's mom probably said those things because she doesn't understand. She sees someone who's homeless and makes assumptions instead of asking questions. That's her problem, not yours or mine. But what she said wasn't true. You're not dirty or lazy or bad. No, I'm not. But even if I was, I'd still be a person who deserves kindness. We all do." Claire stood up. "Come on, let's go talk to Principal Hendricks." The conversation with the principal was tense but ultimately productive. Claire explained what Marcus had said, and to her credit, Hendricks's expression shifted from stern to troubled. That's unacceptable," she said slowly. "If what you're saying is true, why would Noah lie?" Claire interrupted. "He's the one who got in trouble. Making up a story about what the other kid said wouldn't help his case. Nevertheless, I'll need to speak with Marcus and his parents about this. Bullying is taken very seriously at Westbrook." "Good. And while you're at it, maybe have a conversation with all the parents about making assumptions about people they don't know. Because whatever they're saying in their homes is clearly filtering down to the kids." Principal Hendricks stiffened. I can't control what parents discuss in their private. No, but you can set a tone. You can make it clear that this school doesn't tolerate discrimination of any kind, including against people who are experiencing homelessness. Claire kept her voice steady despite the anger thrumming through her veins. I was a teacher for 4 years. I know how school culture works. It starts at the top. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Hendricks nodded slowly. You're right. I'll address this at the next parent assembly. She turned to Noah. Noah, I'm sorry for not getting the full story before calling your father's house. That wasn't fair to you. Noah didn't respond, just pressed closer to Claire's side. On the drive home, Noah was quiet, staring out the window at the passing city. Claire let the silence stretch, knowing he'd talk when he was ready. Finally, he said, Are you mad at me? No, buddy. I'm not mad. Dad's going to be mad. Your dad's going to be upset that you got hurt and that another kid said mean things to you, but he's not going to be mad at you for defending yourself. How do you know? Because I know your dad, and he loves you more than anything in the world. When they got home, Claire texted Adrien to let him know what happened. His response came within seconds. On my way home now. How is he? Shaken but okay. We talked about it. Thank you. Be there in 20. Adrien made it in 15, practically running into the house. Noah was in his room, building with Legos in the focused way he did when he was trying not to think about something upsetting. Hey, Noah, Adrien said from the doorway, his voice gentle. Can we talk? Noah's hand stilled on the Lego pieces. I'm sorry I hit Marcus. I know violence is wrong. I won't do it again. Come here. Adrien sat on the edge of Noah's bed, and after a moment, Noah climbed up beside him. I'm not mad at you for defending yourself or for defending Claire. What I'm mad about is that you were in a position where you felt you had to. Marcus was being mean. I know. Claire told me what he said, and that's not okay, not even a little bit. Adrien wrapped his arm around Noah's shoulders. But you know what the best revenge is? Noah shook his head. Being happy anyway. Living your life, being kind, proving that the mean things people say aren't true, that makes them look foolish, and you look strong. That's what Claire said too, kind of. Adrien glanced at Claire, who was standing in the doorway. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or shared purpose. Claire's a smart lady, Adrien said. You should listen to her. That night, after Noah was asleep, Claire found Adrien in the kitchen making tea. He looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from emotional strain rather than physical work. Want some? He asked, holding up the kettle. Sure. Thanks. They sat at the kitchen island, the house quiet around them. Maria had gone home hours ago, and Noah's soft snoring carried faintly from upstairs. I'm sorry you had to deal with that today, Adrien said. With the principal, with what Marcus said. You shouldn't have to defend yourself to a bunch of judgmental parents who don't know anything about you. I've dealt with worse, Claire said. And honestly, I was more worried about Noah than myself. He really went to bat for you. Yeah, Claire wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Kids are loyal like that when they feel safe with someone. It's one of the things I loved about teaching. They'll defend the people they care about with everything they have, even when it gets them in trouble. Especially then. Adrien was quiet for a moment, staring into his tea. Can I ask you something personal? Claire tensed slightly. Okay. When you were homeless, did people say things like that to you? The things Marcus said? The question surprised her. Most people avoided asking about her time on the streets, like it was something shameful that shouldn't be acknowledged. Yeah, she said honestly. All the time. People assume you're lazy or stupid or morally deficient somehow, like you chose to sleep on cold concrete because it seemed fun. How did you handle it? Mostly I just kept my head down and tried to stay invisible. Engaging with people who'd already decided who you were, it wasn't worth the energy. Claire took a sip of tea. But sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd imagine what I'd say to them if I had the chance. How I'd explain that I was just a normal person who got hit with bad luck and a broken system. Did you ever get that chance? Once. A woman at a soup kitchen started loudly complaining about how homeless people should just get jobs. I was tired and hungry, and I'd had a really bad day, so I told her about my teaching degree, my work history, my medical debt, asked her what she'd do in my position. Claire smiled without humor. She got very quiet and left without finishing her meal. Good, Adrien said fiercely. People need to hear it. They need to understand it could happen to anyone. Most people don't want to understand, because understanding means admitting they're not as safe as they think they are, that the distance between a stable life and homelessness is a lot shorter than they want to believe. Adrien set down his mug, his expression serious. I've been thinking about this a lot since you came here, about how broken the system is, how many people fall through the cracks. I want to do something about it. Like what? I don't know yet. Donate to shelters, maybe. Fund housing programs. Use my platform to advocate for policy changes. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stick up at odd angles. It feels inadequate, like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, but doing nothing feels worse. It's not inadequate, Claire said softly. Every bit helps. Every person housed, every meal served, every policy changed, it all matters. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, the time I spent out there was just meaningless suffering. They sat in silence for a while, nursing their tea and their thoughts. Outside, the city hummed its endless song, sirens and traffic, and the distant rumble of the L train. Can I tell you something? Adrien said finally. Something I haven't told anyone. Claire's heart beat a little faster. Okay. When Victoria left, I was almost relieved. Is that terrible? He didn't wait for an answer. Our marriage was a disaster from the start. We met at a tech conference, had this whirlwind romance, got married 6 months later. I thought I was in love. Turned out I was just lonely, and she was good at pretending to be someone she wasn't. What do you mean? She wanted the lifestyle, the house, the money, the status of being married to a successful CEO. But she didn't actually want the life that came with it. The long hours, the stress, the responsibility of raising a kid while I was building the company. Adrien's voice was flat, reciting facts. When she got pregnant, I thought maybe it would help. Give us a shared purpose. But she hated being pregnant, hated being a mother, hated everything about the reality of what she'd signed up for. That must have been hard, Claire said carefully. The hard part was watching her take it out on Noah. He was just a baby, and she'd get so frustrated when he cried or needed things. She never hurt him, but she'd just shut down, leave him crying in his crib and lock herself in the bedroom. I'd come home from work to find him screaming and her passed out from the wine she'd been drinking all day. Claire felt her chest tighten. Adrien, I should have left her sooner, should have protected him better, but I kept thinking she'd get better, that postpartum depression would pass, that we just needed time. His hands were clenched around his mug so tightly his knuckles were white. Then one day I came home and she was gone. Note on the kitchen counter, closet half empty. At first I panicked, but then I went upstairs and Noah was with the nanny, safe and fed and happy. And I realized he was better off without her. You can't blame yourself for trying to make it work. Can I? I put my son through 3 years of instability because I was too proud to admit my marriage was a failure. You were trying to give him a mother. That's not pride. That's love. Adrien looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made Claire's breath catch. How do you do that? He asked quietly. Do what? Make everything seem less terrible. You've been through hell yourself, but you still manage to see the best in people. Even me. Especially you, Claire said before she could stop herself. You're a good father, Adrien, a good person. You've got your flaws, but who doesn't? You're very forgiving for someone who got burned by the world. Being bitter wouldn't change anything. It would just make me miserable on top of everything else. Claire set down her mug. Besides, you gave me a second chance when nobody else would. That means something. You earned it. You saved my son. And you saved me right back. We're even. We're not even close to even, Adrien said. You've given Noah something I couldn't. Stability, patience, someone who actually knows how to talk to a 6-year-old without making it weird. Claire laughed despite herself. You're not that bad at it. I'm terrible at it. I talk to him like he's a tiny adult. It's a problem. It's endearing. The word hung in the air between them. Claire realized too late how it sounded. Too personal, too familiar. She was the employee. He was her boss. There were lines, and she'd just stepped over one. But Adrien was smiling, a real smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger, less burdened. Endearing, he repeated. I'll take it. The moment stretched, neither of them quite willing to break it. Then Adrien's phone buzzed with an email notification, and the spell broke. "I should let you get some sleep," he said, standing up. "Thanks for handling everything today. With Noah, with the school. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words were casual, throwaway, but they landed in Claire's chest like stones, heavy and significant. "Any time," she managed. After Adrien left, Claire stayed in the kitchen for a long time, staring at her empty mug and trying to sort through the tangle of feelings in her chest. This was dangerous. She was getting too attached to Noah, to this house, to the life she was building here, and maybe possibly to Adrien himself. But she'd promised Noah she wouldn't leave, and Claire Dawson didn't break promises to kids, even if keeping them might break her heart. The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine: school pickups, homework battles, dinner preparations, bedtime stories. Claire fell into the rhythm of it easily, and Noah thrived under the consistency. The nightmares became less frequent. His teacher reported he was participating more in class, even raising his hand to answer questions. "Whatever you're doing at home, keep doing it," she told Claire at pickup one day. "He's like a different child." But not everything was smooth. Marcus's mother filed a formal complaint with the school about Noah's behavior, demanding he be disciplined more severely. Principal Hendricks handled it with surprising firmness, pointing out that Marcus had also received consequences for his part in the incident. Still, the complaint meant Claire had to deal with more pointed stares and whispered conversations at pickup. The other parents made no secret of their disapproval. A homeless woman caring for one of the wealthiest children at the school. It was scandalous, inappropriate, probably dangerous. Claire tried to ignore it, but ignoring the whispers was easier than ignoring the way Adrien had started looking at her. It was subtle, a glance that lasted a beat too long, his hand brushing hers when they both reached for the same dish at dinner. The way he'd seek her opinion on things that had nothing to do with Noah. What wine to serve at his next business dinner, whether the living room furniture was too sterile, if she thought he should grow his hair out a little. Small things. Things that meant nothing individually but added up to something Claire couldn't quite name. She told herself she was imagining it, that Adrien was just being friendly, treating her like a valued employee. That the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her was gratitude, nothing more. But late at night, lying in her comfortable bed in her comfortable room, Claire couldn't quite convince herself. One Saturday evening, 6 weeks into her new life, Adrien surprised her by suggesting they all go out to dinner. "There's this Italian place Noah loves," he said. "We haven't been in months. I thought it might be nice." "You two should go," Claire said automatically. "Spend some father-son time together. Come with us." It wasn't quite a request. "Please." Noah specifically asked if you'd come. Which was how Claire found herself in a booth at a cozy Italian restaurant, Noah bouncing excitedly beside her while Adrien studied the wine list. "Can I get the spaghetti with the giant meatballs?" Noah asked for the third time. "Yes," Adrien and Claire said in unison, then looked at each other and smiled. "You two sound like real parents," Noah observed, "like married ones." The statement hung in the air like a bomb. Claire felt her face heat, and Adrien nearly dropped the wine list. "We're not," Adrien started. "I know you're not married, Dad. Duh!" Noah rolled his eyes with the confidence of a child who thought he understood everything. "But you act like it sometimes. Like when you both tell me to do my homework at the same time, or when you give each other looks when I say something funny." "What kind of looks?" Claire asked, genuinely curious despite her embarrassment. "The kind where you're trying not to laugh, but you want to make sure the other person also thinks it's funny." Noah demonstrated by attempting a subtle glance at Adrien, who was staring very intently at the wine list. "Buddy, maybe we should," Adrien tried. "It's okay. I like it." Noah swung his legs under the table. "It's nice having two people around who like each other. Mom and Dad never looked at each other like that." Claire's heart squeezed. She wanted to redirect the conversation, to save Adrien from this awkward moment. But before she could, the waiter appeared to take their order. Dinner proceeded normally after that, filled with Noah's chatter about school and Legos and the new dinosaur book Claire had gotten him from the library. But Claire was hyper-aware of Adrien across the table, the way he'd gone quiet and thoughtful. On the drive home, Noah fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the excitement. Claire and Adrien rode in silence, the city lights streaming past the windows. "I'm sorry about what Noah said," Adrien finally said, "about us acting like we're married. That was, he shouldn't have put you on the spot like that. He's 6. 6-year-olds say whatever pops into their heads. Still, it was inappropriate. Claire looked out the window. Was it wrong, though? What he said about us looking at each other? The silence that followed was heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. No, Adrien said quietly. It wasn't wrong. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. Adrien, I know this is complicated and probably a terrible idea, and you work for me, which makes everything weird. He kept his eyes on the road. But I can't stop thinking about you. The way you are with Noah, the way you fit into our lives like you were always supposed to be here, the way you make me laugh when I've forgotten how to. I needed you to know. Claire didn't know what to say. Her mind raced through 1,000 responses, 1,000 reasons why this was impossible. I don't expect anything, Adrien continued. I'm not asking you to feel the same way or do anything about it. I just couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel it anymore. They pulled into the garage and Adrien turned off the engine. In the sudden quiet, Claire could hear her own breathing, fast and shallow. I do, she said. Feel the same way. I've been trying not to, but I do. Adrien turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Yeah? Yeah, Claire laughed shakily. Which is a problem, because you're my boss, and I'm living in your house, and I don't want to mess this up for Noah. So what do we do? I don't know. Claire looked back at Noah, still sound asleep in his car seat. But whatever we do, we have to be careful. He can't get hurt because we're figuring out our feelings. Agreed. Adrien reached across the console and took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. We'll take it slow. Figure it out as we go. Slow, Claire repeated. I can do slow. But as they sat there in the dark garage, hands intertwined, neither of them moved to let go. Slow turned out to be harder than either of them expected. They tried. They really did. But there were moments when slow felt impossible, like when Adrien's hand would linger on Claire's shoulder as he passed her in the kitchen, or when their eyes would meet across the dinner table and the air would thicken with everything they weren't saying. Noah noticed, of course. Kids always noticed. Why do you keep smiling at each other like that? He asked one morning at breakfast, his spoon halfway to his mouth. Like what? Claire tried to keep her voice casual. Like you have a secret. You do it all the time now. Noah looked between them suspiciously. Is it a surprise for me? Because my birthday isn't until August. No surprise, Adrien said quickly. We're just happy. Is that okay? Noah considered this seriously. Yeah, I guess. I like it when you're both happy. It's better than when Dad used to be grumpy all the time. I wasn't grumpy all the time, Adrien protested. You kind of were, Noah said matter-of-factly. Before Claire came, you were always on your phone looking mad about emails. Claire bit back a smile as Adrien's ears turned red. Out of the mouths of babes, she murmured. Traitor, Adrien muttered, but he was fighting a smile too. The truth was, things had shifted in the house. The air felt lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted that Claire hadn't even realized was there. Adrien laughed more, worked less, actually sat down for full meals instead of eating standing up while checking his laptop. Noah's anxiety continued to improve. No nightmares in 2 weeks. And he'd even made a friend at school, a quiet girl named Sophie who liked dinosaurs as much as he did. Everything should have been perfect, but Claire couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on a Tuesday afternoon in late April. Claire was at the grocery store with Noah, debating between 2 brands of pasta sauce, when she heard a voice she hadn't heard in almost a year. Claire? Claire Dawson? She turned and there was Jessica, her former best friend, former roommate, the person who'd kicked her out when things got hard. Jessica looked exactly the same. Highlighted hair, designer yoga pants, the kind of casual wealth that came from never having to worry about money. Jessica. Claire's voice came out flat. Oh my gosh, it is you. Jessica's eyes were wide, taking in Claire's clean clothes, her neat hair, the cart full of groceries. I heard you were... someone said they saw you. She stopped, clearly uncomfortable. Homeless? Claire supplied. Yeah, I was. For 8 months. Jessica flinched. I'm so sorry. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't know how to find you, and Brian said... She cut herself off again. Brian said what? That it wasn't our problem, that you made your choices and had to live with them. Jessica's face was red now. But I should have tried harder, should have done something. Noah tugged on Claire's sleeve. Who's this? An old friend, Claire said, then corrected herself. Actually, no, someone I used to know. Jessica's face crumpled slightly, but she nodded. That's fair, I deserve that. She looked at Noah. Hi there, I'm Jessica. I'm Noah. Claire takes care of me. That's nice. Jessica's eyes shifted back to Claire, questions written all over her face. So you're working as a nanny now? Something like that. For anyone I'd know? Claire felt a perverse satisfaction in answering. Adrien Kingston, the CEO of Kingston Technologies. Jessica's jaw actually dropped. You're working for Adrien Kingston, the billionaire Adrien Kingston. That's the one. How did you... that's amazing. Good for you. Jessica's tone suggested she thought it was anything but amazing, that she was calculating angles and implications and probably coming up with a dozen judgmental conclusions. Claire felt Noah press closer to her side, picking up on the tension even if he didn't understand it. We should go, Claire said. Nice seeing you, Jessica. Wait, Jessica grabbed her arm. Can we talk just for a minute, please? Claire looked down at Noah. Can you go grab the bread we forgot? Right over there? She pointed to the bakery section, still within view. Noah nodded and scampered off. Claire turned back to Jessica, arms crossed. What do you want to say? I'm sorry. Jessica's voice cracked. I'm so sorry for what I did, for kicking you out when you needed help, for not trying to find you, for all of it. Okay. Okay? Jessica looked confused. That's it? What do you want me to say? That it's fine, that I forgive you? Claire shook her head. I spent 8 months sleeping on concrete because you chose your boyfriend over our friendship. I nearly died of hypothermia twice. I ate out of dumpsters. I got harassed and propositioned and attacked. And you want me to just say okay and move on? No, Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what I want. I just feel terrible. Good. You should feel terrible. Are you ever going to forgive me? Claire thought about that. Really thought about it. A month ago, the answer would have been an automatic no. But living with Adrien and Noah had softened something in her, had reminded her that people were complicated and flawed, and sometimes did terrible things for reasons that made sense to them at the time. Maybe someday, she said finally. But not today. Today I'm still too angry. Jessica nodded, wiping her eyes. That's fair. I deserve that too. Noah came running back with a loaf of sourdough, and Claire took it from him gratefully. Ready to go, buddy? Yeah, can we get ice cream on the way home? Absolutely. As they walked away, Jessica called out, Claire, I really am happy you're okay, that you found somewhere safe. Claire didn't turn around, but she raised one hand in acknowledgement. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Maybe that was enough for now. In the car, Noah was uncharacteristically quiet. You okay? Claire asked, glancing at him in the rear view mirror. That lady made you sad. A little bit, yeah. Was she mean to you before? Not mean exactly, just she wasn't there when I needed her to be. Noah thought about this. Like my mom. The comparison caught Claire off guard. Sort of, yeah. Do you miss her? The lady from the store? I miss who I thought she was. But it turns out she wasn't really that person. That's confusing. Yeah, Claire agreed. It really is. That evening, after Noah was in bed, Claire told Adrien about running into Jessica. They were sitting on the back deck, a space Claire had only recently discovered, all comfortable furniture and string lights that made everything feel magical. How did it make you feel? Adrien asked. Seeing her again? Angry, sad, vindicated, weirdly. Claire pulled her sweater tighter around herself. She looked so shocked that I was okay, like she'd written me off as a lost cause. People underestimate you. Adrien's voice was quiet. They always have. What makes you say that? Because I've seen it. The other parents at school, my business associates when I mention you, even Jennifer when I first told her I was hiring you. Everyone assumes they know your story, who you are, what you're capable of. And they're always wrong. Claire felt her throat tighten. You don't know my whole story either. No. But I know enough to know you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for, including yourself. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights twinkling in the distance. Can I ask you something? Claire said finally. Anything. What are we doing? Really doing? Because this thing between us, it's not going away, and pretending it doesn't exist is getting harder. Adrien turned to look at her, his expression serious in the dim light. What do you want to be doing? I don't know. I just know that every time you look at me, I forget how to breathe. And that's terrifying because I've worked so hard to put my life back together, and getting involved with you could mess everything up. Or it could make everything better. You don't know that. No, Adrien admitted, but I'd like to find out. Claire's heart was hammering. What about Noah? If we try this and it doesn't work, he gets hurt. I can't do that to him. What if we try this and it does work? That's a big what if. So is assuming it won't. Adrien reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I'm not asking you to jump into anything. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, we deserve to be happy. I don't know how to do this, Claire whispered. How to be with someone. I've spent so long just surviving that I forgot how to actually live. Then we'll figure it out together, one day at a time. Claire looked at their joined hands, at the way her scarred palm fit perfectly against his. She thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea, all the ways it could go wrong. But she also thought about Noah's smile, about the way Adrien had given her a second chance when no one else would, about the feeling of belonging that had grown in her chest over the past 2 months. Okay, she said, one day at a time. Adrien's smile was like sunrise, slow and warm and full of promise. He leaned in, and Claire met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. The kiss was soft and careful, both of them treating this moment like the fragile, precious thing it was. When they pulled apart, Adrien rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for weeks, he admitted. Me too. Yeah? Yeah. They sat there under the string lights, hands clasped, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Claire felt completely, perfectly at peace. The next few weeks were a strange kind of wonderful. Adrien and Claire navigated their new relationship with the careful attention of people walking on eggshells, hyper-aware of Noah and how their dynamic might affect him. But Noah, with the uncanny perception of children, seemed to think everything was exactly as it should be. Are you and Dad dating now? He asked Claire one afternoon, completely out of nowhere. Claire froze, a dish towel in her hands. What makes you ask that? Because he touches your back when he walks past you now, and you both get all smiley and weird when you think I'm not looking. Noah didn't even glance up from his Legos. Also, he bought you flowers last week. Dad never buys flowers. They were for the house, Claire said weakly. They were pink roses, your favorite. You told me that when we saw them at the farmer's market. Noah finally looked up, his expression serious. It's okay if you're dating. I don't mind. You don't? No, I like you. And Dad's happier when you're around. Why would I mind? Claire sat down on the floor beside him, overwhelmed by the simple logic of a 7-year-old who just wanted the people he loved to be happy. You're a pretty cool kid, you know that? Noah grinned. I know. That night, Claire told Adrien about the conversation. He laughed so hard he nearly spilled his wine. He's known the whole time, Adrien said. We're terrible at being subtle. Apparently. Claire shook her head. He's okay with it, though. That's what matters. More than okay. He asked me yesterday if you were going to be his new mom. Claire's breath caught. What did you tell him? That relationships don't work that way. That we're taking things slow. That labels don't matter as much as how we treat each other. Adrien set down his glass. But between you and me, the idea of you being his mother doesn't scare me the way I thought it would. It should scare you. I have no idea what I'm doing. Neither do I. But we're figuring it out together, aren't we? I guess we are. Spring turned to summer, and with it came changes. Claire officially got her teaching license reinstated after months of paperwork and background checks. Adrien surprised her by funding a new community center in the neighborhood where the fire had happened, the same fire that had brought them all together. I want you to help design the educational programs, he said when he showed her the architectural plans. You're the teacher. You know what kids need. Claire stared at the blueprints, overwhelmed. Adrien, this is incredible. It's necessary. That neighborhood's been underserved for years. This is just a start. They worked on the project together over the summer, Claire developing curricula while Adrien handled the business and construction side. It felt good to be using her teaching skills again, to be creating something that would help kids who needed it. Noah started attending a summer day camp where he made more friends and came home every day with elaborate stories about capture the flag tournaments and nature hikes. His anxiety had diminished to the point where his therapist, who Claire and Adrien had finally gotten him to talk to, suggested reducing his appointments to once a month. "He's doing remarkably well," Dr. Chen said during a parent meeting. "The stability at home, the consistent routines, the feeling of being safe and loved. It's made all the difference." Walking out of that appointment, Adrien grabbed Claire's hand and didn't let go. "We did that," he said quietly. "Together. You did most of it. You're his dad. And you're—" Adrien stopped, searching for words. "You're everything else. The glue holding us together. The reason he smiles every morning. The person who makes our house feel like a home." Claire's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. "Stop. You're going to make me cry in this parking lot." "Would that be so terrible?" "Yes. I have a reputation to maintain." Adrien laughed and pulled her into a hug, right there in the therapist's parking lot, not caring who saw. In August, Noah turned 7. They threw him a birthday party at the new community center, which was nearly finished. Noah invited his entire class, and to Claire's surprise, most of them actually came. Even Marcus, whose mother had apparently gotten over her objections after her husband took a job at Kingston Technologies. Claire bit her tongue on the irony. The party was chaos in the best possible way. Kids running everywhere, cake smashed into carpet, the kind of beautiful mess that meant everyone was having fun. Noah was in his element, showing off his new Legos and explaining the community center's features to anyone who would listen. "This is where my dad works," he announced proudly. "And Claire helped design the classrooms. She's a teacher. She's really smart." Claire caught Adrien's eye across the room, and he mouthed, "I love you," when he thought no one was looking. She mouthed it back. Later that night, after all the guests had left and Noah had crashed from a sugar high, Claire and Adrien stood in the empty community center. "We should probably name this place," Adrien said, looking around at the fresh paint and new furniture. "You're the one who funded it. You should name it." "I was thinking the Dawson Center." Adrien's voice was casual, but his eyes were serious. "After the woman who showed me that courage isn't about money or power, it's about running into burning buildings for kids you don't know." Claire's throat was too tight to speak for a moment. "You can't name it after me." "Why not?" "Because I didn't—" She struggled to find words. "I just did what anyone would do." "No, Claire. You did what no one else did. You saw someone who needed help and you helped them, even though it cost you. That's worth honoring." "The Dawson Center," Claire repeated, testing the words. "It sounds too formal." "The Claire Dawson Hope Center?" "Absolutely not." They went back and forth, laughing and suggesting increasingly ridiculous names until they finally settled on the Second Chance Center. It felt right. A place for new beginnings, for kids who needed someone to believe in them, for second chances that might change everything. Just like the one Adrien had given Claire. The center's grand opening came in September, right as Noah started second grade. The neighborhood turned out in force. Families, local politicians, media covering Adrien's latest philanthropic venture. But what mattered most to Claire were the kids, dozens of them, exploring the new space with wide eyes and excited chatter. "This is amazing," one mother said to Claire, her accent thick and her eyes grateful. "My daughter, she has nowhere to go after school while I work. This program, it's answer to prayer." Claire directed her to the registration desk, then found herself standing in the main classroom, the one she'd designed specifically for elementary tutoring. She ran her hand over the brand new desks, the colorful posters on the walls, the books lining the shelves. A year ago, she'd been sleeping on loading docks. Now she was here, about to start teaching again at a private academy while also volunteering at this center on weekends. Life was strange, beautiful and strange, and nothing like she'd planned. "There you are." Adrien appeared in the doorway, Noah's hand in his. "We've been looking for you. There's someone who wants to meet you." He stepped aside and Claire's breath caught. It was the fire chief. The same one who'd been at the scene that night, the one who'd overseen the rescue operation. Ms. Dawson, he said, extending his hand. Chief Morrison, I've been wanting to thank you properly for what you did that night. That was one of the bravest things I've seen in 30 years of firefighting. Clare shook his hand, overwhelmed. I just reacted. I didn't think about it. That's what makes it brave. Most people freeze. You ran toward danger. He glanced at Noah. You saved this young man's life. His father's been telling me about this center, about everything you're doing. You should be proud. After he left, Noah tugged on Claire's sleeve. He said you were brave. I guess I was. I already knew that, Noah said matter-of-factly. You're the bravest person I know. Claire knelt down to his level, her eyes stinging. You know what? You're pretty brave too. Braver than you think. Because I made friends at camp? Because you kept being kind even when people were mean to you. Because you trusted me when you'd been hurt before. Because you keep trying even when things are scary. Claire pulled him into a hug. That's the best kind of brave. Noah hugged her back fiercely. When he pulled away, his expression was serious. Claire, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to stay forever? Like, really forever? Claire looked up at Adrien, who was watching them with an expression so full of love it took her breath away. Yeah, buddy, she said softly. I'm going to stay forever. Good, because you're my family now. The word hit her like a lightning bolt. Family. Not employee, not nanny, not the woman who lived with them. Family. You're my family too, Claire whispered. Both of you. That night, after Noah was asleep and the house was quiet, Adrien found Claire on the back deck again. It had become their spot, the place where they had their most honest conversations. I have something for you, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Claire's heart stopped. Adrien, it's not that. Not yet. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant. It's a phoenix, for rising from the ashes. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but it was perfect. Claire let him fasten it around her neck, her fingers touching the pendant. Thank you, she managed. Claire, Adrien took her hands in his. I know we said we'd take things slow, and we have been, but I need you to know something. Okay? I'm in love with you, completely, terrifyingly in love with you. I have been for months, and I know this started under strange circumstances, and I know there's a power dynamic we have to be careful about, but he took a breath. I can't imagine my life without you in it. You've changed everything. Me, Noah, our whole world. You made us whole again. Claire's tears were falling freely now. I love you too. I've been scared to say it because I thought maybe I was just grateful, or maybe I was confusing security with affection, but it's not that. It's real. You're real, and this is real, and I love you. Adrien pulled her close, and they stood there under the stars, holding each other like they were the only two people in the world. So what now? Claire asked eventually. Now we stop being scared. We build a life together. We give Noah the family he deserves. We make mistakes and figure things out and love each other through all of it. That simple? That's simple. What about the fact that I used to be homeless? That people will always judge, will always whisper? Let them whisper. I don't care what anyone thinks except you and Noah. And you both think I'm doing okay, so that's enough. Claire laughed through her tears. You're doing better than okay. We're doing better than okay, Adrien corrected. All three of us. And standing there in his arms, Claire finally believed it. She'd spent so long thinking she was broken, that her life was over, that she'd never be whole again. But she'd been wrong. She wasn't broken. She was healing. She wasn't finished. She was beginning, and she wasn't alone anymore. 6 months later, on a cold February evening, exactly 1 year after the fire that had changed everything, Claire stood in front of her third-grade class at Westbrook Academy. It was her first day back teaching, and the kids were looking at her with the curious intensity that 7- and 8-year-olds brought to everything. Good morning, she said, smiling. I'm Miss Dawson, and I'm going to be your teacher for the rest of the year. A hand shot up immediately. Are you the lady who saved that kid from the fire? Claire had known this was coming. The story had made local news, and kids talked. I am, she said simply. Were you scared? Very scared. Did it hurt when you got burned? Yes, but it was worth it. Why? Another student asked. You didn't even know him. Claire thought about how to answer that. how to explain to children that sometimes you do the right thing, not because you know the outcome, not because you'll get rewarded, but simply because it's right. Because everyone deserves to be saved, she said finally. Everyone deserves someone who'll fight for them, who won't give up on them. And sometimes you have to be that person, even when it's hard. The kids considered this with the seriousness of people encountering a big truth for the first time. "Are you married to Noah's dad now?" one girl asked, and Claire laughed. "Not yet, but ask me again in a few months." Because there was a ring in Adrien's dresser drawer. Claire had found it by accident while putting away laundry, a simple diamond on a platinum band tucked in a velvet box behind his socks. She'd put it back without saying anything, her heart racing with joy and terror in equal measure. Adrien would ask when the time was right, and Claire would say yes, because she'd learned something over the past year, something that all the hardship and pain and struggle had taught her. Life wasn't about avoiding falls. It was about getting back up, about letting people help you stand when you couldn't do it alone, about believing that second chances existed, that redemption was possible, that love could find you even in the darkest places. That night, Claire came home to find Noah and Adrien building an elaborate Lego castle in the living room. They'd made a mess, blocks everywhere, instruction manuals scattered across the floor, but they were laughing, and the house felt warm and alive in a way it never had before she arrived. "You're home!" Noah abandoned the castle to run and hug her. "How was your first day teaching?" "Perfect," Claire said, and meant it. "How was your day?" "Good. Dad came to eat lunch with me at school, and then we got ice cream even though it's a Tuesday." "Sounds like someone's getting spoiled," Claire said, raising an eyebrow at Adrien. "Special occasion," Adrien said, not looking remotely apologetic. "First day of the rest of our lives and all that." Noah rolled his eyes. "Dad's being dramatic again." "He does that sometimes," Claire agreed, grinning. They ate dinner together, the three of them, talking about their days and making plans for the weekend. After Noah went to bed, Claire and Adrien cleaned up the Lego mess, working in comfortable silence. "I saw it," Claire said as she handed him a handful of small blocks. "Saw what?" "The ring in your sock drawer." Adrien froze, then laughed. "So much for surprise." "You were never going to surprise me. I do your laundry." "Fair point." He set down the Legos and pulled her close. "Does this mean I don't have to do the whole elaborate proposal thing?" "Oh, you're still doing that. I want the full romantic gesture. Demanding." "You love it." "I love you, Adrien corrected. "The demanding part is just a bonus." Claire kissed him, soft and sweet, still marveling at the fact that this was her life now, that she got to have this, the messy house, the happy kid, the man who looked at her like she hung the moon. "For the record," she said when they pulled apart, "when you do ask, the answer's yes." "Good to know." Adrien's smile was radiant. "Just to be clear, you're sure? About all of this? About us? About Noah? About building a life together?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Claire touched the phoenix pendant at her throat, the symbol of everything she'd survived and everything she'd become. "You gave me a second chance when I had nothing. Now I want to give you and Noah everything, for as long as you'll have me." "Forever, then." "Forever," Claire agreed. And looking around at the Lego-strewn living room, at the home they'd built together from the ashes of their separate tragedies, Claire knew she'd finally found what she'd been looking for all along. Not rescue, not charity, not pity, but belonging, purpose, love. A family built not by blood or obligation, but by choice, by courage, by the simple decision to keep showing up, keep trying, keep believing that broken things could be made whole. The fire that night had taken so much, her safety, her certainty, her skin, and her breath. But it had given her something too, a chance to be brave, a reason to run toward danger instead of away from it, a path to the life she was always meant to live. Sometimes the worst moments led to the best outcomes. Sometimes you had to lose everything to find what really mattered. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you got to start over, to rise from the ashes and become someone new. Someone stronger, someone who knew that home wasn't a place. It was the people who stayed when everything else fell apart. Claire had found her home, and she was never letting it go. Outside, Chicago glittered in the February darkness, the same city where she'd once slept on frozen concrete. But that felt like another lifetime now, another person entirely. Claire Dawson had been homeless, broken, lost. But Claire Dawson was also brave, resilient, loved, and that, she thought, as Adrien's arms wrapped around her and Noah's soft snoring drifted down from upstairs, made all the difference.